Chapter 1569. Oh my! The lattice eyes were filled with contempt as she scanned the people in the square in a disdainful manner. "I'm not interested in wasting time with you all. You better call Jiang Yu out obediently." All the elders and disciples' faces darkened. "Insolent. If you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being impolite." Thinking that she was just a crazy woman, Elder Kuan completely lost his patience. He immediately bolted toward her and aimed a blow at that lady in the red. The lady in red did not have any change in expression. Looking at Elder Kuan, who lunged toward her, she simply lifted her hand slowly and pointed a finger straight at Elder Kuan. Elder Kuan seemed to be stopped by a powerful force and was immediately frozen in midair. "What?" Elder Kuan's expression changed slightly. The lady waved her finger impatiently. Boom! With a loud crash, Elder Kuan was flung in the direction of the lattice finger movement. Everyone in the square was dumbfounded. Elder Kuan is pretty skilled, yet he's so vulnerable when facing this lady? That lady sent Elder Kuan flying with just one finger? I have no time to waste with you all. Call Jiang Yu out or I will wreck Taiwan Valley today. The lady in red narrowed her eyes slightly and swung her sleeves. An overbearing sensation of pressure suddenly loomed over everyone's head. Even the elders were breaking out in cold sweat under this powerful pressure. How does she have such terrifying power? The lattice slight revelation of her power already terrified everyone. Everyone's hearts sank. This lady and the Domain Monarch founder seemed to be acquainted for a long time, and at the thought that the Domain Monarch founder's acquaintances must all be top powerful figures, the elders immediately exchanged a look. "We have offended you, senior. However, even if you want us to look for our Domain Monarch founder, you need to tell us your name. Otherwise, how can we notify the Domain Monarch founder?" Realizing that the lattice skills were way beyond all of them, the elders softened their tone at once. The lady in red waved a hand and withdrew the pressure on everyone before responding. "Tell Jiang Yu that I, Xie Wushang, want to meet him." Elder Qian immediately went to notify Jiang Yu after hearing her name. Currently, Jiang Yu had just passed down swordplay techniques to Yi Qingtang. He had intended to let Yi Qingtang try the 4 sets of techniques for him to see, but he noticed Elder Qian coming in hurriedly. "MHM? What is it?" Jiang Yu asked in a low voice. Elder Qian immediately said, "Reporting Domain Monarch founder, a lady wishes to meet you." "A lady wishes to meet me?" Jiang Yu furrowed his brows slightly and said coldly, "What lady is this? How demanding of her. Does she think she can meet me just because she wants to?" Elder Qian replied. She said, "Her name is Xie Wushang." Jiang Ye's expression changed the moment Elder Qian spoke. "What did you say her name was?" Jiang Yu looked at Elder Qian strangely. "Xie Wushang." Jiang Yu took a deep breath secretly and responded immediately. "I got it. Tell her that I will come in a while." Elder Qian did not suspect anything and immediately returned as he thought to himself, "This Xie Wushang is indeed the Domain Monarch founder's old acquaintance." Once Elder Qian left, Jiang Ye's expression turned ugly immediately. Yu Qiong noticed Jiang Ye's expression and could not help but laugh. "This Xie Wushang is truly infatuated with you. She has already chased you for over 10,000 years and is even able to find this place now." Chapter 1570. Oh my! Clearly, Yu Qiong knew Xie Wushang as well. Jiang Yu was not the slightest bit interested in talking to Yu Qiong right now and immediately looked at Yi Qingtang. "Bring me out of the valley immediately." "What?" Yi Qingtang was taken aback. "What is going on? Didn't Jiang Yu say that he wanted to meet that Xie Wushang earlier on? Why does he want me to bring him out of the valley now? Meet Xie Wushang?" Jiang Yu did not want to see her ever again in his life. Jiang Yu was very dashing back in the days, and coupled with his martial talent, many girls fell for him. However, Jiang Yu was deeply in love with his wife and no longer looked at anyone else ever since he fell in love with her. Even if others liked him secretly, he never paid any attention to them. Even after his wife passed, he was unable to put this love behind him. He instead entered the land of infinite demons and kneeled for thousands of years to plead for his wife's revival. Many ladies were head over heels for him, but he had never looked at them. This Xie Wushang was also one of the people who adored Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu could simply ignore the person if she was anyone else, but Xie Wushang was a powerful figure from the second domain. She was born with extremely great talent and had an arrogant nature. Ever since she met Jiang Yu, she could not forget about him. Regardless of whether Jiang Yu was married, she never gave up and pursued him all the way, tormenting Jiang Yu quite a fair bit. Jiang Yu stayed in the land of infinite demons for 10,000 years and originally thought that Xie Wushang had forgotten about him completely. Yet, unexpectedly, he had just returned, and Xie Wushang actually got news of it and came over. In the past, Jiang Yu could just spar with Xie Wushang when he met her to force her to retreat, but now, don't ask so much. Just bring me out of the valley secretly. Jiang Yu looked at Yi Qingtang and spoke. He knew Xie Wushang. Once they met, she would pester him endlessly. Yi Qingtang did not know why Jiang Yu wanted to do this but could only follow his orders when she saw his expression. Follow me. Jiang Yu looked at Yu Qiong and said. Yu Qiong laid on the couch in an unperturbed manner and waved his hand lazily. For what? She's here to find you. What has it got to do with me? I think you shouldn't run either. You've run away for 10,000 years, and it is about enough. Xie Wushang is quite pretty, has a good figure, and is very talented. You should just yield to her. Jiang Yu almost kicked Yu Qiong to the ground. He could not be bothered to talk to Yu Qiong any further and immediately had Yi Qingtang sneak him out of the valley. Yi Qingtang brought Jiang Yu and flew into the sky and out of the valley. But before they could fly out of the valley, a red figure suddenly appeared before the two people. Jiang Ye's face darkened the moment he saw that blazing red figure. Jiang Yu, you're thinking of running again. Xie Wushang, who was floating in the air, squinted her eyes at Jiang Yu. While Jiang Yu was currently in the form of a child, she could clearly sense that it was none other than him given her martial realm. A look of surprise flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes when she saw the gorgeous lady before her. Then, Yi Qingtang slowly landed on the ground with Jiang Yu. Although she knew that Jiang Yu seemed to be avoiding this lady, they were spotted right now, and there was no other choice. Elders and disciples rushed over hurriedly as well. Xie Wushang, I've already told you clearly that we are not fated. Don't pester me anymore, Jiang Yu said with a dark expression. Xie Wushang's eyes narrowed and suddenly swept across Yi Qingtang, who was beside Jiang Yu. 1571 Oh my 4 Xie Wushang's gaze sharpened immediately when she noticed Yi Qingtang's beautiful face. You didn't accept me last time because of your wife. Now, is it because of this little lover beside you? Since that's the case, I will kill her and see if there's still anyone who can stand between you and me. Xie Wushang had a murderous glare, and she directly aimed a blow at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang was dumbfounded. How did she become Jiang Ye's little lover? Yi Qingtang's face was ash-white as she looked at the murderous air surrounding Xie Wushang and the powerful aura that filled the air. Madam Founder, you're mistaken. I am not the Domain Monarch Founder's lover. I am just a clan member of the Jiang family. Yi Qingtang said hurriedly, seeing that she was about to be struck dead by the jealous Xie Wushang. The words, Madam Founder, extinguished the murderous air around Xie Wushang immediately. She retracted her hand abruptly and smiled at Yi Qingtang, whom she wanted to kill just a while ago. Jiang Ye's face darkened further. Yi Qingtang broke out in cold sweat out of fear. Sorry, Domain Monarch Founder. She could not be blamed. It was really because Xie Wushang was too powerful. He who understood the times was a wise man. Little girl, you are a good talker. Are you really his descendant? Xie Wushang spoke. Yes, I am indeed a descendant of the Jiang family. Yi Qingtang immediately disassociated herself from Jiang Yu. She would die really wrongfully if she was killed for being viewed as Jiang Ye's lover. Xie Wushang was still a little doubtful, and she looked at Jiang Yu. She knew that Jiang Yu would never lie about such matters. Otherwise, he would not have rejected her repeatedly over these years. That's right, Jiang Yu said. Xie Wushang chuckled immediately and looked at Yi Qingtang with a friendlier attitude. Perhaps the address of Madam Founder was really too much to her liking. There will only be one person as my wife in my life. Xie Wushang, there is no possibility between us, Jiang Yu said coldly. Xie Wushang's expression darkened in just a moment. Jiang Yu, I've pursued you for so many years, but you hugged your dead wife and kneeled in the land of infinite demons for so many years. Am I not better than a dead woman? Xie Wushang's expression was dark to the extreme. Xie Wushang was endowed with great talents and was a known figure in the second domain. She had a beautiful appearance, and plenty of people did all they could to gain her favor. She was a delicate treasure cherished by the masses, but she compromised in every possible way when it came to Jiang Yu. She had pursued him for 10,000 years, yet he wasn't even willing to spare her an eye? Jiang Yu, my patience is limited. I'll give you one more chance. Are you willing to be with me? Xie Wushang narrowed her eyes as a trace of murderous intent emerged in her eyes. The spirit energy around her gradually intensified, and an invisible pressure diffused in the air. The surrounding elders and disciples who followed over were truly dumbfounded. Why didn't they expect this Xie Wushang and their domain monarch founder to have such a relationship? Watching the formidable Xie Wushang release her pressure gradually, everyone in the Jiang family could not help but break out in a cold sweat. Jiang Ye's complexion did not seem well either, but he showed no signs of giving in. Jiang Yu, I'm asking you one last time. Are you willing to be with me? If you reject me again, I won't let you be with anyone else in the future even if that means killing you, Xie Wushang said. 1572 Oh my 5-inch my answer is still the same even if you ask me 1,000 more times. Jiang Yu replied emotionlessly. The Jiang family members broke out in a cold sweat when they saw Jiang Ye's resolute attitude and Xie Wushang's darkening expression. Domain monarch founder, there is nothing bad about Madam Founder either. Why don't you yield to her? An elder said while enduring the powerful pressure. Just Xie Wushang's skills themselves made her completely qualified to become the Madam Founder of the Jiang family. The domain monarch founder's wife had passed a long time ago, and it was time he lay it down. Moreover, this Xie Wushang was so infatuated with the domain monarch founder, and such devotion was truly hard to find. Jiang Yu glanced expressionlessly at the people who made these sarcastic remarks. If he wanted to yield to her, he would have done so a long time ago. Why would he wait until now? Alright, you forced me to do this. Xie Wushang laughed from the extreme anger, and her gorgeous face was filled with smiles. Jiang Yu, Xie Wushang, have never treated anyone with such devotion, but you trampled over it in the mud. Since I can't gain your heart or your person, I will not let anyone else have what I want. Then the aura around Xie Wushang surged, and a murderous look appeared in her eyes. Seeing the enraged Xie Wushang, Jiang Yu secretly squeezed the space ring on his finger and immediately took out a Dharma treasure, which he used to fly to the sky and escape. He originally did not intend to use the Dharma treasure at this time, otherwise, he would not have told Yi Qingtang to bring him out. However, he could only do so now. The people of the Jiang family did not expect Jiang Yu to want to avoid Xie Wushang to this extent and were stunned. Jiang Yu, you think you can run? With a scoff, Xie Wushang suddenly soared up and chased after him. Everyone remained stunned as they looked at Jiang Yu and Xie Wushang soaring to the sky one after another. Madam Founder only said that in the moment of anger. Domain Monarch Founder, why must you be this way? Domain Monarch Founder, don't leave. Madam Founder is devoted to you and will not really kill you. She may have said that in the moment of, that person was not done with his sentence. But Xie Wushang formed a sword with her red spirit energy and slashed at Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu barely dodged the sword aura, but the mountain beneath him was struck into two instantly. The person who was trying to persuade Jiang Yu just now was flabbergasted. She freaking wanted to kill him for real. Yi Qingtang was dumbfounded as well as she did not expect Xie Wushang to be for real. Based on her stance, Xie Wushang really wanted to kill Jiang Yu. In the sky, Jiang Yu and Xie Wushang flew across the sky rapidly one after another, and the sight left everyone in the Jiang family dumbstruck. This is a crime of passion. The little white tiger in Yi Qingtang's arms mumbled meaningfully as it looked at the two figures that gradually went out of sight. Yi Qingtang was silent. What darn crime of passion? She had just learned 4 sets of techniques from the domain monarch founder, and he left just like that. Based on Xie Wushang's attitude, their fight would probably continue on endlessly. Yi Qingtang reckoned that she need not hope to meet Jiang Yu anytime soon. Yi Qingtang was upset and disappointed, and such emotions were felt even more strongly by the Jiang family elders. The domain monarch founder finally returned to the Jiang family yet had to leave so soon? However, they really did not expect the domain monarch founder to have such a love affair outside. Furthermore, Xie Wushang actually was serious about her words. Those two people flew so rapidly that even Elder Qian and the rest did not have the chance to persuade Jiang Yu any further. 1573 cultivation. The youths of the Jiang family had not gotten over their excitement about the domain monarch founder's return, yet the domain monarch founder had left already. While they were very surprised about the domain monarch founder's child form, they did not think much about it and simply thought that the domain monarch founder's powers were boundless and that he learned a special technique to return to his youth. Elder Qian and the rest saw that there were no other options and could only instruct everyone to continue with their cultivation. Meanwhile, Yi Qingtang sighed softly and returned to her room, where she practiced the 4 sets of techniques Jiang Yu taught her. Those techniques may look simple, but mastering them was not an easy thing to do. Just the finger technique itself took Yi Qingtang an entire afternoon. Nonetheless, her finger pointing was still weak and had no imposing air at all. Yi Qingtang was not anxious though, as she was aware that this foundational technique could not be achieved in a day and had to be practiced diligently. For 2 whole days, Yi Qingtang had been figuring out the method to master this finger technique and repeatedly cultivated the same technique. Despite her efforts, there were no signs of impatience on her face. If she was exhausted, she would sit on the ground to cultivate before continuing with the technique once she recovered slightly. Becoming a powerful figure was never easy. What Yi Qingtang had more than others was nothing but the willpower she sharpened over 300 years. Knowing that it was beneficial to her, she could continue to practice no matter how difficult and mundane the process was. After 2 sleepless days, Yi Qingtang was finally much more familiar with the finger technique. Although not as imposing as Jiang Yu, her finger pointing could now cause a gentle breeze to blow around her finger, and her finger had much more power than before. The little white tiger was sprawled on the bed as it fell into a trance while watching Yi Qingtang repeating the same thing over and over again as though she never got tired. If not for Elder Qian summoning Yi Qingtang, she could probably still cultivate in the room alone for half a month and remain oblivious to fatigue and hunger. Elder Qian. Yi Qingtang greeted him respectfully when she arrived at Elder Qian's living quarters. Elder Qian glanced at Yi Qingtang with a rather complicated expression and sighed in his heart. Yi Qingtang was originally brought into the Elder Cabinet by the domain monarch founder, who also intended to personally teach her. However, Xie Wushang's arrival 2 days ago messed up this plan. The domain monarch founder was nowhere to be found in the past 2 days, and it seemed that he would be unable to return anytime soon. With his departure, Yi Qingtang, who had just entered Taiyuan Valley, was now all alone. If she had outstanding talent coupled with her mutated heavenly demon bloodline, she would definitely be a talented junior valued by all. However, she seemed rather weak and worthless. Nevertheless, she ultimately had the Jiang family bloodline, and since she had already entered Taiyuan Valley, there was no such thing as casting her aside. After a discussion among the cabinet elders, it was decided that Elder Qian, who returned together with Yi Qingtang, would take over the domain monarch founder's job in guiding Yi Qingtang through the foundation martial techniques of the Jiang family. Elder Qian did not think much about teaching Yi Qingtang. Thinking that the domain monarch founder left Taiyuan Valley not long after he returned, Elder Qian came to the conclusion that the founder must have not taught Yi Qingtang any martial techniques. Then, Elder Qian glanced at Yi Qingtang and spoke. You have entered Taiyuan Valley and should learn the martial techniques of the Jiang family. However, you do not have a solid foundation and still need to rebuild it. The Jiang family has a total of 4 types of foundational techniques. I will teach you the finger technique first today. Remember it by heart and cultivate diligently when you return. I will teach you other things next time. Although he knew that Yi Qingtang's talent was mediocre, Elder Qian was still a rather responsible person. 1574 Cultivation 2 Yi Qingtang originally planned to tell Elder Qian that the domain monarch founder had already taught her 4 sets of techniques. However, she stopped herself when she considered the difficulties she faced when practicing the finger technique. The domain monarch founder was not in the valley right now, and she could not ask him about anything she did not understand. Now that Elder Qian was going to reteach her, she could watch carefully and ensure that there were no errors in her cultivation in the future. Curiosity, diligence, and humility, Yi Qingtang understood their importance and genuinely wanted to ask for guidance. Elder Qian saw Yi Qingtang's positive attitude and was satisfied. Even if she could not become a top powerful figure, she could not ruin the Jiang family's reputation at the very least, and her future was dependent on her luck. Elder Qian immediately performed the finger technique before Yi Qingtang's eyes immediately. While Elder Qian's finger technique was powerful, it was still quite lacking when compared to the domain monarch founders. However, he did his best as he was extremely patient and told Yi Qingtang about all the important points. Yi Qingtang looked very closely. Comparing how she practiced in the past 2 days and Elder Qian's finger technique, she faintly felt the difference and was grateful on the inside. Elder Qian was rather pleased with Yi Qingtang's serious attitude toward learning. Although he was aware of Yi Qingtang's mediocre talent, he guided her attentively on the account that she was studious and serious. Elder Qian guided Yi Qingtang repeatedly for the entire afternoon and corrected some of her mistakes, which benefited her understanding greatly. Practice well when you're back. I will teach you other things after some time, Elder Qian said slowly. There were many youths in the valley, and he himself had quite a number of disciples as well. Thus, he had no time to monitor Yi Qingtang's cultivation all the time. Given Yi Qingtang's talent, she probably needed at least 1 month to be familiar with and master this finger technique. It would be alright if she could practice diligently, but if she slacked off, nothing could help her anymore. Yi Qingtang nodded and thanked Elder Qian sincerely. Although she could feel that Elder Qian did not value her much, he was impartial and did what he could, which she was extremely grateful for. As Elder Qian watched Yi Qingtang leave the room, he could not help but shake his head and sigh. What a pity! Elder Qian was very satisfied with Yi Qingtang's eagerness to learn, but if her talent could be a little greater. Elder Qian did not think too much either, and these thoughts were diverted away when other youths came to seek guidance. After all, the Jiang family still had to prioritize the training of top talents. As for Yi Qingtang, her outcome was dependent on her luck. After gaining Elder Qian's guidance, Yi Qingtang had a sudden flash of insight and was already very familiar with the finger technique in just 2 days. Afterward, Yi Qingtang went through the palm technique, movement technique, and swordplay technique individually to familiarize herself. Perhaps because of Elder Qian's attentive guidance where he pointed out the main points of the Jiang family's techniques, Yi Qingtang understood many key aspects of those 3 techniques without any extra guidance from Elder Qian and could learn them smoothly and easily. Yi Qingtang almost never left her room for a whole month. Apart from stepping out to have a meal every 2 or 3 days, the remaining time was all spent in the room cultivating. She either familiarized herself with the 4 techniques or cultivated through meditation. She truly wasted no time. Exactly because of such diligence, Yi Qingtang was skilled in all these 4 techniques in just a month. Furthermore, Yi Qingtang also obtained a huge advancement in her skills through this high-intensity cultivation. 1575 Cultivation 3, she advanced straight from the peak of Arcane Supremacy 8 Heaven to the peak of Arcane Supremacy 10th Heaven and was only 1 step away from the Heavenly Venerate realm. Although Yi Qingtang's martial realm was low, she mastered 4 new sets of cultivation techniques and advanced 2 small realms consecutively in just a month. This speed was indeed shocking. It was just that no one noticed her because she rarely left her room and neither her martial realm nor endowment was high. Yi Qingtang was not anxious though. Thinking that she still had 10,000 honor points in her hand, she decided to rest for a day before heading to the Jiang family's sacred cultivation ground to increase her skills. After making this plan, Yi Qingtang surprisingly allowed herself to rest for a day. The moment she opened her door, she saw Jiang Shaobai kneeling at her door while playing with a baganadier with a lowered head. Hearing the sound of the door, Jiang Shaobai looked up immediately, and a wide smile bloomed on her face suddenly. "Sister Qing, I've been waiting for a long time. If you hadn't come out soon, I'm afraid I would have died of starvation outside your door." Yi Qingtang did not know how to react when she saw the pitiful-looking Jiang Shaobai. Yi Qingtang did not know what was up with this little girl, but every time Yi Qingtang left her room to eat in this past month, Yi Qingtang would always see her and be dragged to have her meal. Gradually, the two of them reached a subtle rapport, and every 2 to 3 days, Jiang Xiaobai would wait for Yi Qingtang outside her door to have their meal together. If you die from starvation, wouldn't I be a huge sinner? Get up. Let's go and eat together. Smiles filled Yi Qingtang's eyes. She was not against Jiang Xiaobai getting closer to her. Although she felt that it was rather strange, she somehow felt that Jiang Xiaobai did not mean any harm. With a grin, Jiang Xiaobai hugged Yi Qingtang's arms and walked out. Along the corridors, Jiang Qi saw the back view of Jiang Xiaobai and Yi Qingtang leaving together and frowned instinctively, but he remained silent in the end. Yi Qingtang rarely left her room this month, and in addition, she had just come to Taiyuan Valley. Thus, logically speaking, there should only be a few people who recognized her. However, as she was always with Jiang Xiaobai whenever she appeared, she attracted the attention of many people. Jiang Xiaobai had an extroverted personality. Yi Qingtang found out that many people always greeted Jiang Xiaobai whenever she was out with her, and it seemed that Jiang Xiaobai had good relations with the people in the valley. "Xiaobai, why are you here so late today? We were all waiting for you." A 16 or 17-year-old waved his hand once he spotted Jiang Xiaobai's figure. A group of youths who usually hung out with Jiang Xiaobai was already seated at the table. "Who told you all to wait? It's not like I can't eat by myself." "How long-winded," said Jiang Xiaobai before pulling Yi Qingtang to sit with them. The youths at the table were all focused on Jiang Xiaobai as they chatted and laughed. Because of Jiang Xiaobai, Yi Qingtang frequently had her meals together with this group of teenagers. However, Yi Qingtang was like a transparent person that did not exist to them, and barely anyone talked to her. Yi Qingtang did not mind either as she was fully occupied with cultivation matters. However, she vaguely sensed that although these youths always joked around with Jiang Xiaobai, they seemed to be rather fearful of Jiang Xiaobai from their tone. Even if they were chastised by Jiang Xiaobai, they mostly laughed it away and never fought back. "Sister Qin, are you still going to stay in your room this afternoon?" Jiang Xiaobai blinked and asked Yi Qingtang while biting her chopsticks. 1576 Cultivation 4, "I wish to go to the sacred ground," Yi Qingtang said. The moment she spouted those words, the youths who ignored her focused their eyes on her for the first time and looked at her with odd expressions. "You have honor points?" one of the youths asked doubtfully. Yi Qingtang could tell his disbelief but did not take it to heart. "The sacred ground? Which sacred ground do you wish to go to?" The Taiyuan Valley's sacred ground is split into 5 canyons, and each of them has a different cultivation effect. The better the effect, the more honor points required. Jiang Xiaobai explained. "I haven't thought about it yet. I'll take a look then." Yi Qingtang only had 10,000 honor points and still did not know how many honor points were required for each of the 5 valleys, so she still needed to take a look before deciding. Biting the ends of the chopstick, Jiang Xiaobai took a look at Yi Qingtang and did not say anything else. Yi Qingtang left first after finishing her meal. Although she originally wanted to rest for a day, she abandoned that idea and headed to the sacred cultivation grounds at once. She did not have any more time. Once Yi Qingtang was out of everyone's sight, those youths finally spoke. "Xiaobai, this Yi Qingtang's endowment is mediocre and is the bottom among all the youths in the bottom. Why are you always with her?" A youth frowned rather unhappily. If not for Jiang Xiaobai, they would never interact with someone with mediocre talent like Yi Qingtang. Jiang Xiaobai did not rush to reply. Rather, she took a sip of water at her own pace, wiped her mouth slowly, and finally replied, "I'll hang out with whoever I want. Since when was it up to you all to tell me what to do?" Her tone was calm but devoid of the usual clarity and more loaded with gloom. Those youths sharply sensed Jiang Xiaobai's unhappiness and immediately changed their words. "Xiaobai, we did not mean to tell you what to do. You also know that Jiang Yenyun and those bunch of people are up to something recently. The martial arts championship is in 5 months, and I heard that the people on Jiang Yenyun's side are working extremely hard for it. We don't wish for Jiang Yenyun to obtain a spot in the martial arts championship. In terms of endowments and innate talent, no one else is better than you in the entire Taiyuan Valley. That's right. If you were the same age as Jiang Yenyun, that fellow would already have been crushed by you. He is so arrogant now only because of the fact that he has been in the valley since young. Why waste time on that Yi Qingtang? If you like her, the few of us can just give her some advice. You can just set your mind at rest and prepare for the martial arts championship. To these youths, they simply had no idea why Jiang Shaoba treated Yi Qingtang so differently, and neither could they understand what she was thinking. They only treated it as though Jiang Shaobai was interested in Yi Qingtang. There was truly no need for Jiang Shaobai to waste time interacting with a teenage girl that just entered the valley with low skills and endowment. That's right. If you think highly of her, we can just train with her. Everyone else agreed. Given Yi Qingtang's realm, she would benefit greatly when any one of them provided a few tips. I know what I'm doing. Instead of nagging over here, why don't you all scram back to cultivate? I heard that you all fought with Jiang Yanyun's people and that the outcome was not too good. Jiang Shaobai cast them a look. Everyone laughed awkwardly. Chapter 1577 Cultivation 5 The Jiang family had countless extraordinary talents, but those who could stand at the tip of the pyramid could be counted. Jiang Shaobai and Jiang Yenyun were one of those few people. Furthermore, Jiang Yenyun was currently the most formidable junior in Taiyuan Valley. Some elders even may not win against him in a spar. Ever since Jiang Shaobai and Jiang Yenyun met, they were on unfriendly terms, and the youths on both sides had been fighting both openly and covertly for a long time. The martial arts championship spot was one of the targets of their competition. Although the number of spots available for the martial arts championship was still unknown, tension had already begun filling the air. On the other side, Yi Qingtang headed to the Jiang family's sacred ground. It was the deepest corner of Taiyuan Valley where a mountain range split the boundless valley into 5 canyons. A Jiang family warden guarding outside the canyon was recording something with his head lowered and only looked up when he felt someone getting close. His eyes subsequently landed on the alluring girl who carried a little white tiger in her arms. Hello. I wish to enter the sacred grounds to cultivate. May I know what rules there are? Yi Qingtang asked. The warden glanced at Yi Qingtang and found her to be extremely foreign. Then, he recalled the rumor of the Domain Monarch founder's return. He seemed to have heard that the Domain Monarch founder brought a Jiang family junior back to train with great care. However, that junior was found to lack endowment after the test, so the Domain Monarch founder lost his patience and left without caring about her anymore. When the Domain Monarch founder left Taiyuan Valley, only a few elders and juniors were present, and everyone had a tacit agreement to keep mum about the reason behind his departure. Rather, those who were unaware falsely assumed that the Domain Monarch founder was dissatisfied over a lacking junior who he chose and thus left to not waste any time. The warden did not speak and merely raised his hand and tapped the golden tablet at the entrance, signaling Yi Qingtang to look at it herself. The Taiyuan Valley sacred ground was split into 5 canyons, namely the Gong, Shang, Jiao, Zheng and Yu canyons. The cultivation effects became more obvious and prominent in that sequential order. A day of cultivation in the Gong Canyon was equivalent to 10 days outside. A day of cultivation in the Shang Canyon was equivalent to 20 days outside. Following this pattern, a day of cultivation in the Yu Canyon was equivalent to 50 days outside. However, the closer to the end of the sequence, the larger the number of honor points required for that canyon. A day of cultivation in just the Gong Canyon required 2,000 honor points while the Yu Canyon required 10,000 honor points. Yi Qingtang had a total of 10,000 honor points, and if she used them in the Yu Canyon, she would have to leave after a day. Apart from increasing the cultivation speed, the spirit energy in the different canyons had different refinement effects on the body. The closer to the end of the sequence, the better the effects of the canyon. Yi Qingtang weighed her options and ultimately decided on the Gong Canyon. Her current realm was not high, and there was a limit to the amount of spirit energy she could absorb. If she went to the Yu Canyon, the one-day duration would probably be wasted. I want to enter the Gong Canyon for 5 days. Yi Qingtang handed in the honor points to exchange for a chance to cultivate in the Gong Canyon for 5 days and was immediately led into the Gong Canyon by the warden. Right after Yi Qingtang entered, 2 youths who were approaching the sacred grounds noticed the back view of Yi Qingtang entering Gong Canyon. Isn't that the girl that has always been beside Jiang Shaobai recently? A youth squinted his eyes and said, Jiang Xiaobai has such great innate talent, but God knows what she is thinking to actually waste time on that girl. I think she can forget about reaching Brother Yanyan's realm in this lifetime. Another youth sneered. Chapter 1578 Breakthrough 1. Jiang Xiaobai has always been like that. But Jiang Yulong and the others still follow her lead. I think they're all fools. The two youths conversed for a while before leaving together. Yi Qingtang slowly walked into Gong Valley. A cool breeze blew from the valley, brushing past her cheeks. The entire valley was filled with rich spirit energy. There were many air vents in the ground, and from time to time, steam would shoot out of them, filling the entire valley with hot steam. Yi Qingtang walked within the valley for a while and noticed that the spirit energy was mostly evenly distributed throughout the valley. However, there was a little more spirit energy in the areas where there were more air vents. There's probably something peculiar beneath the ground of this valley. Yi Qingtang's gaze fell on the air vents that were continually shooting out steam. She felt curious but did not waste time analyzing it. She could only stay in the valley for 5 days. She must make the best of this short time. Now, her cultivation realm was just a step away from the heavenly venerate realm. Otherwise, she would not have used up all her honor points here. Arcane supremacy and heavenly venerate were just a realm apart, but between them was a gulf that was almost impossible to cross. Once crossed, one would realize that the realms were completely different. Yi Qingtang calmed herself down and sat cross-legged at a spot with the most air vents. Although steam surrounded her and it was as hot and suffocating as an oven, she slowly closed her eyes and allowed herself to sink completely into the spirit energy. She slowly guided her spirit energy around her body and through her meridian points. She cultivated for 5 days and 5 nights. During these 5 days and nights, Yi Qingtang did not drink a drop of water or move an inch. She continually guided her spirit energy around her body and sensed that the invisible door to the next realm, which had been blocking her, was being slowly pushed aside. The surrounding steam reddened Yi Qingtang's pale face. The little white tiger, who had been cuddled in her arms, could not stand the damp heat of the steam. It shook its fur and crawled down to look for a cooler place. But at that moment, the little white tiger saw that Yi Qingtang's expression lacked its usual willfulness, so it kept quiet and did not make any noise. On the 5th night, in the quiet of the night, a golden ray of light suddenly burst forth from Yi Qingtang. The golden ray rushed towards the heavens, lighting up the entire dark valley. But the sacred ground was deep within Taiyuan Valley, and it was late at night, so no one noticed these signs of a breakthrough. When the golden light shot back into Yi Qingtang's body, Yi Qingtang suddenly opened her eyes. The golden glow that floated around her meant she had successfully broken through the first door of the heavenly venerate realm within these 5 days. She had finally entered the heavenly venerate realm. She puffed out a hot breath, and a smile surfaced on her face. She lifted her hand and casually wiped away the sweat on her cheeks. Then she looked at the time. She still had half a day before she had to leave the valley. Although she had received a breakthrough, Yi Qingtang did not dare to waste time. These 10,000 honor points had been hard to come by. She intended to fully grasp every minute and every second and continue cultivating. Yi Qingtang only walked out of Gong Valley the next afternoon. Her entire aura had changed subtly. It's a pity that I've used up all my honor points. Yi Qingtang returned to her room to wash herself up. She sensed the new strength within her body. She might have entered the heavenly venerate realm, but she still had quite some way to go before she could enter the martial arts championship. There were still 5 months left. Within these 5 months, she had to do her best to narrow the gap between her and others. Chapter 1579 Two-Star Constellation 1. The youths that hung around Jiang Xiaobai were around the 2nd or 3rd heaven of the heavenly venerate realm, not to speak of the others. It would be wonderful if I was at the Temple of Shadows. Then I might have been able to enter the illusory void to train. Yi Qingtang could not help thinking of the illusory void in the Temple of Shadows. Although the god of nature was not very reliable, the illusory void was a wonderful thing. Too bad that it was not realistic for her to return to the Temple of Shadows. Just as Yi Qingtang was thinking about it again, she suddenly felt a strange warmth coming from her wrist. Yi Qingtang looked down, puzzled. The 9 souls ring on her wrist that had belonged to the Holy Lord of Shadows was now glowing with a blinding light. For a moment, Yi Qingtang could not figure out why it was glowing, and she was enveloped by the glow. Yi Qingtang was blinded by the bright light, but the illusory void's voice rang in her ears. Fortunate explorer, welcome back to the illusory void. Isn't that the god of nature's voice? Yi Qingtang was startled. The blinding light faded. What appeared before her eyes was not her room in Taiyuan Valley, but the nebula-filled illusory void that she had bid farewell to some time ago. The god of nature's radiant body floated before her eyes. A look of surprise flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes, and she glanced at the 9 souls ring on her wrist. The 9 souls ring originally belonged to the Holy Lord of Shadows, and the illusory void had been sealed in the temple by the Holy Lord of Shadows herself. Perhaps the Holy Lord of Shadows had left her imprint on her private possessions, turning it into a key to the illusory void. That way, the Holy Lord of Shadows could enter the illusory void whenever she liked, even if she was not in the Temple of Shadows. Fortunate explorer, which constellation would you like to enter this time? The languid radiant body floated and shifted around before Yi Qingtang's eyes. Its tone was solemn and calm, but Yi Qingtang could discern a thread of anticipation in its voice. As the radiant Bodhi's voice rang out, the surrounding constellations drifted forth as if they would swallow her at any moment. Yi Qingtang glanced at the various constellations. She had chosen the 1-star constellation previously because it was lowest ranked and would allow her to advance the most. Yi Qingtang knew that the higher the constellation level, the greater the effect it would have on her cultivation. But having experienced the 1-star constellation, Yi Qingtang realized that although it could increase her cultivation state within a short time, she would need a period of refinement before she could fully grasp it. Also, since she could enter the illusory void anytime, she could take her time. So Yi Qingtang lifted her hand and pointed at the 2-star constellation. Said the radiant body. Yi Qingtang could vaguely hear the radiant body muttering. But when she glanced at it, the radiant body appeared normal. You really won't consider the others? The 4-star constellation is pretty good. The radiant body seemed to want to promote the other constellations. Yi Qingtang had personally experienced the high-level constellations that the radiant body had termed the best and most suitable. She had almost died there, so she chose to pass over any of the radiant Bodhi's recommendations. No need. I'll go there first, said Yi Qingtang. The radiant body seemed rather wistful. It slowly summoned the 2-star constellation. Then Yi Qingtang picked up the little white tiger, who had been sprawled on her, and flew straight into the 2-star constellation. Chapter 1582 Star Constellation 2. After her experience in the 1-star constellation, Yi Qingtang was familiar with entering the world of the constellations. After experiencing heaven and earth spinning around her once again, Yi Qingtang smelled the strong scent of fish. The smell mingled with other odors to form a nauseating stench. Yi Qingtang slowly opened her eyes. Before her was a gloomy and narrow alley. It was getting dark, and the scene before her was shrouded in gray. Yi Qingtang subconsciously waited for a message from this world to surface in her mind. But she waited for a long time without any message appearing. Why are you waiting here? The god of nature, who had transformed into a child, floated out from behind Yi Qingtang. This time, you did not enter anyone's body. You can enter this world in your own body. The god of nature seemed to guess why Yi Qingtang was waiting and slowly explained it to her. Only then did Yi Qingtang study her clothing and discover she was wearing her original clothes. The space ring on her finger was also familiar. You need not have any particular identity to enter the world of constellations. You may enter in the body of someone from that world and take over their identity, or you may enter as yourself. The god of nature slowly explained. If she entered the world in someone's body, she would directly gain the original owner's knowledge of the world. If she came as herself, she would have no understanding of the world and would have to slowly explore it. Yi Qingtang did not feel that there was much difference between the two situations. In fact, she thought it was more convenient to enter as herself. Just as Yi Qingtang was preparing to question the god of nature about her current mission, she suddenly heard the clatter of a carriage. Lights flickered in the entrance of the dim alley. Although night was falling, there were still many people milling around. Yi Qingtang glanced at the people passing through the alley, and a look of surprise surfaced in her eyes. Go take a look at this world first. The god of nature was in no hurry to issue Yi Qingtang with her mission. Right now, Yi Qingtang needed to familiarize herself with the world she was in. Yi Qingtang slowly walked out of the dark alley. What she saw caused her to widen her eyes. The pedestrians hurrying along the street were all tall with deep-set features. They looked completely different from the people that Yi Qingtang had met previously. Most of them had golden hair and blue eyes or brown hair and green eyes. They had prominent noses and high cheekbones, and all of them were very tall. An alien race? Yi Qingtang could not help but feel curious when she saw this group of people with strange hair and eye colors. But when she examined them closely, she noticed that they did not have the aura of an alien race. The aura that surrounded them was exactly the same as that of the human race. Human race? Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. A troop of heavily armored knights was riding their tall horses across the street. Their armor looked peculiar, as if they were made entirely out of metal and protected their body completely. Their helmets also completely veiled their features so that nothing was exposed. A carriage was being escorted by the heavily armored knights. As they crossed the street, a carriage suddenly appeared. On it hung a drawing of a heavily armored man with a pair of wings. He looked somewhat like the winged people, but the structure of his wings was different. Chapter 1581 2-star Constellation 3, Bishop of York, please protect our troops. Various prayers emerged from the crowd. The respectful and devout expressions on the people's faces did not vanish even after the carriage and knights had gone. Yi Qingtang did not know how to feel when she saw this strange scene. These people were clearly humans, but they were completely foreign. Their hair color was like that of an alien race, and all of them, whether male or female, had deep-set features and snow-white skin. Even their attire was completely different from the clothes that Yi Qingtang was familiar with. Here, the women mostly wore tight-waisted dresses with long, loose skirts. The men all wore close-fitting clothes similar to the leather armor of martial arts outfits. Yi Qingtang quietly watched the scene before her as she thought about whether she should find a place to familiarize herself with her environment. She quickly found the place with the densest crowd. A place filled with the fumes of alcohol. Yi Qingtang thought that this must be a restaurant, so she stepped in. She realized that her appearance in the dim firelight had attracted the attention of many pedestrians. When this strange world's large-sized people saw a petite young girl with jet-black hair and shining black eyes, they looked horrified. Yi Qingtang entered the establishment that looked like a restaurant and sat down in a corner. After she entered, she realized that this place was not what she had expected. A few bearded, burly men had rolled up their sleeves, showing their well-muscled biceps. They clutched huge mugs and were banging them together. She could vaguely see some white substance that looked like foam continually flowing from the mugs. A woman with an enchanting figure flicked her long, curly hair. She was dressed revealingly, and she giggled as she circulated among the men, who also embraced her. Her little hands teased their hairy chests. Yi Qingtang felt that this was a very strange place. Does this adorable young lady want anything? We have intoxicating wine and delicious beef here. The woman who was dressed so revealingly plopped herself down at Yi Qingtang's table. Her reddish-brown hair was long and hung to her shoulders in waves, and her dark green eyes smiled provocatively. Because Yi Qingtang was sitting in the corner, the darkness veiled her hair and eye color so that others could not see her clearly. Adorable, young lady? Yi Qingtang's lips twitched a little. Please, a portion of meat will do. Yi Qingtang spoke slowly in a warm and polite tone. The red-haired girl frowned slightly. Please? Will do. What does that mean? But she understood a portion of meat, so she smilingly noted it down and went to prepare it. When she brushed past her companions, she remembered to smile teasingly and say, "Hey, did you see that? That poor little lamb has ended up here. Pray that she won't be devoured by the wild beasts here." Fred's bar was a paradise for men. Yi Qingtang was seated in darkness and could hear the shouts from the surrounding people. With her keen sense of hearing, she could clearly hear the voice of every person present. She needed to extract information about this world from their conversations. 1582 Two-star constellation 4. Amidst the shouting and scolding, Yi Qingtang could vaguely discern that the country she was in was called the Supreme League Kingdom. It was the most ambitious country on the mainland, and it had the greatest military strength compared to others. The knights of this kingdom had made incursions in every neighboring country and conquered much land. Any hostility was crushed to dust between the steel hooves of the Supreme League Kingdom's cavalry. As the Supreme League Kingdom expanded continually, another two countries, which were similarly ambitious, sheltered under the Supreme League Kingdom's wings and began a battle to dominate the world. But this battle against the rest of the world was at an impasse. A few powerful countries that had taken a neutral stance at first had become displeased by the Supreme League Kingdom's invasions and ordered punitive expeditions against the Supreme League Kingdom. Yi Qingtang quickly absorbed this information. Who knew what kind of mission that awful god of nature would give her? She glanced around, wondering what the god of nature was doing. Yi Qingtang was rendered speechless by what she saw. Only she could see that the god of nature had mixed in with the crowd and was dancing a strange dance with the curvaceous lady and the burly men. Does that mean that he just wanted to seize the opportunity to enter the various worlds and have some fun? Yi Qingtang was just feeling helpless when the curvaceous lady placed a plate of beef that was still oozing blood before her. She also gave her a blunt knife and a fork with broken tines. Yi Qingtang felt perplexed when she looked at the two utensils. Are there no chopsticks? Yi Qingtang looked helpless. She was about to throw the beef that was oozing with blood into the little white tiger's mouth when there was a sudden disturbance at the bar. A few well-built men, with their faces reddened with alcohol, had started brawling. The entire place was in chaos, and various utensils were sent flying. The shrill screams of a woman mingled with the shouts of the men. Although Yi Qingtang was sitting in a corner, she saw a burly man flying straight at her. She subconsciously raised her hand and caught the burly man, then placed him on the ground. The burly man seemed to be drunk. The moment he landed on the ground, he turned and tried to punch Yi Qingtang's head. A group of busybodies saw that he had suddenly swung at the petite young lady, and they roared in excitement. Yi Qingtang's expression did not change when she saw that this ungrateful man had swung his fist at her. She single-handedly caught the burly man's fist. The soft, pale little hand seized the fist that was even larger than her head. As the burly man realized that his fist would not budge, a look of agony appeared on his large, hairy face. "Get lost," Yi Qingtang said coldly. Then she lifted her hand slightly and flung him aside. The burly man fell with a crash, splintering the table and chairs and causing the crowd to roar with laughter. "Charlie, your muscles are like cotton wool. What a joke. You can't even manage a little fellow." The burly man who had been flung aside was irritated and angry. He roared with rage and flung a huge beer barrel at Yi Qingtang. "Will there be any end to this?" Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. She had nothing to say about the actions of this barbarian. She picked up the little white tiger, and with a leap, her petite figure vanished before everyone's eyes. When she next appeared, she was standing behind the burly man. Her soft, pale little hand grasped the burly man's neck. Then she smashed his huge body onto the ground. 1583 Black, which won the mouth of the embarrassed and angry burly man, was filled with blood after his fall. He raised his head and was about to curse at her. Then he saw the beautiful young girl standing under the lamplight. Her long black hair was loose, and her black eyes were slightly narrowed. With just one glance, the burly man grew extraordinarily frightened. He quivered as he kneeled on the floor as if he had seen something terrifying. A strange mood hung over the bar, and there was an unprecedented dead silence. Had she been too rough? Yi Qingtang could not help but feel puzzled as she looked at the frozen crowd. She could not see any spirit energy moving around these people. The spirit energy in this world was average. From the way the men in this bar fought, Yi Qingtang could only describe their fighting abilities as barbaric. The god of nature was having fun. When he saw that the place had come to a standstill, he landed on Yi Qingtang with laughing eyes. Yi Qingtang had a feeling that this fellow was up to no good. A few slender men sneaked out of the back door of the bar when they saw that no one was paying attention to them. Yi Qingtang had no intention of making a scene here. When she saw the crowd's strange reaction, she thought that she had better leave. In any case, she now had a basic understanding of this world. But before Yi Qingtang could take a single step, the surrounding people shrank back in terror. They looked at her as if they had seen a ghost. Did they have to look so terrified even if her appearance was somewhat different from them? For the second time in her life, Yi Qingtang doubted her looks. Am I so terrifying? Yi Qingtang could not be bothered to find out why they were so afraid of her. She turned and made her way to leave this foul place. Yi Qingtang had just walked to the door, but had not yet stepped across the threshold, when she suddenly saw a hunchbacked old woman wearing tattered old clothes. The old woman suddenly rushed in front of Yi Qingtang, and her wrinkled face was filled with terror and anger. She took out a silver hexagram and squeezed a shrill scream from her throat. You detestable servant of the devil! You are surrounded by holy light. Don't you dare spread disaster to our city. Devil? Servant? Disaster? Yi Qingtang did not understand what the old woman was talking about, but she could clearly see that the old woman was glaring at her with the same expression that some self-righteous people in the first mainland used when attacking a heretic sect. We must not allow this evil black witch to leave. She has succumbed to the wiles of the devil and has abandoned God's guidance. Her appearance here will destroy our little town. The old woman screeched in self-righteous tones as if she was prepared to fight the devil to death. Since she is already here, she has planted the seeds of a curse. The plague will come soon. We can only break the devil's curse by burning this black witch. We must not allow her to leave. The old woman roared with all her might. What black witch, what curse? Yi Qingtang was completely confused by the old woman. As the old woman bellowed, the terrified people in the bar recovered their wits. It was as if the words, "The plague will come soon," had caused even greater terror. Chapter 1584 Black Witch 2. A black witch was a servant of the devil who had sold her soul. They believed in the idea of a devil. In order to serve their master, they would cruelly bring all kinds of disasters on people. The most prominent features of these black witches were their long, jet black hair and dark eyes. The devil came from hell, and his favorite color was black. We cannot allow her to leave this place or disaster will come upon our city. Someone in the panicked crowd let out a terrified wail. Those who feared the black witch began to surround the entire bar. Looking at the girl before them with tense expressions, they grabbed onto utensils and wooden stools. Yi Qingtang saw that the crowd before her was terrified. They stared at her in horror and anger. She was still rather puzzled as they continued to scold and roar at her. Black witch? What's a black witch? Yi Qingtang felt that she could still understand what was happening in the one-star constellation. Why was this two-star constellation so bewildering? As she looked at the pairs of terrified and hate-filled eyes, Yi Qingtang felt that if not for the fact that she entered this world in her own body, she would have thought that she had inhabited the body of a villain who had committed all kinds of evil deeds and killed many people. As the people continued to yell and scold, the clatter of horse hooves drew nearer. The people who had gathered outside the bar with burning torches when they heard the commotion now turned towards the sound. They saw heavily armored knights on their tall horses heading in their direction. Everyone acted as though they had seen their savior. Hopeful smiles appeared on their terrified faces. They looked reverently at the magnificent carriage behind the knights. It's the Bishop of York. The Bishop of York is here. Damn black witch, you're doomed now. The Bishop of York will certainly send you back to hell. The people cheered. As the door of the carriage slowly opened, a middle-aged man dressed in a long, white robe alighted. His eyes were deep-set, and his brown beard was neatly combed. As everyone looked on respectfully, he glanced at the chaotic scene and frowned slightly. Bishop of York, we've discovered a black witch. Please help us avert disaster and save those of us who are believers. The old woman who had been viciously snarling at Yi Qingtang rushed over to the Bishop of York the moment she saw him. She piously kneeled before the Bishop of York as she prayed. The Bishop of York's gaze fell on the young girl in the bar. He was startled when he saw that the girl had long, jet-black hair and shining eyes as dark as the night sky. The claws of the devil are reaching for innocent citizens. You servants of the devil are not fit to step into this peaceful and happy place. The Bishop of York spoke solemnly. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Yi Qingtang with disdain. With that, the Bishop of York raised his hand slightly. The Vatican's knights that had followed him now advanced a step and handed him a holy chalice made of pure silver. Water sloshed in the holy chalice, reflecting the firelight. 1585 Black Witch 3. When the crowd saw the holy chalice in the Bishop of York's hand, they seemed to see a ray of hope. Pious smiles appeared on their faces. In these years when war was widespread, the Vatican was their greatest source of spiritual comfort. Living on the edge between life and death, only God's guidance, as relayed by the Vatican, could relieve their fears and unease. One might say that in the hearts of the citizens, the Vatican was equivalent to imperial authority. At the Bishop of York's notice, everyone in the bar frantically scrambled to leave. They could not wait to distance themselves from the Black Witch. In a moment, the entire bar was completely empty, only Yi Qingtang was left. Large numbers of Vatican knights surrounded the bar. They held long spears and stood at the ready. The light of God covers the earth, dispelling all darkness. The servants of evil will eventually meet their destruction. While God is present, He will not permit evil souls like you to tread this earth. The Bishop of York held the silver holy chalice in one hand and a silver hexagram in the other. He raised his arms slightly as he intoned solemnly. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly as she watched this middle-aged man who looked like a quack. The next second, the Bishop of York gestured widely and slowly poured the holy water at the entrance of the bar. I have sealed the servant of the devil within. Souls that have been corrupted by the devil have to be utterly destroyed with fire, the Bishop of York said solemnly. The knights from the Vatican instantly understood what the bishop meant. They poured barrels of strong alcohol on the bar and then threw their flaming torches into it. In a moment, the entire bar was engulfed by roaring flames. Cheers continually rang from the crowd. They seemed to be celebrating the burning and destruction of the devil's servant. Bishop of York, why did a Black Witch appear here? A devout believer asked in terror. The Bishop of York said, for the past half a year, our Supreme League Kingdom has been attacked from all sides. Our enemy countries must have secretly made a deal with the devil to devastate our country with plagues and disasters, and they want to destroy His Majesty's ambition of uniting this mainland. From the Supreme League Kingdom's initial sweeping victories to today's impasse, they had experienced innumerable invasions. The stalemate was gradually turning into defeat. This made all the people in this kingdom jittery. To outsiders, the Vatican appeared to be impartial and independent. However, the Bishop of York and the others resided in the Supreme League Kingdom and had naturally benefited from the kingdom. If the Supreme League Kingdom were to be destroyed, they would not be treated well. In order to calm the people, for the past few years, they had blamed the devil for all the disasters and accidents that occurred in the kingdom. This was the enemy countries persecuting them, not God punishing the kingdom. The Vatican had always been the people's greatest source of spiritual support, so since the Bishop of York said so, they believed him without question. Abominable devil, abominable Black Witch, burn her. We must burn her to death. As tension in the group rose, the crowd's shouting grew more intense. Who in this group has interacted with the Black Witch? The Black Witch is extremely malicious. Just casual contact is sufficient for her to corrupt you. The Bishop of York spoke coldly as his gaze swept through the crowd. Everyone quickly looked away. Even the burly man whom Yi Qingtang had thrown to the ground did not dare to speak, for fear of being implicated. Chapter 1586 Black Witch 4 Black Witches specialized in voodoo and black magic. They could curse someone near them without being detected. No one dared to speak out and say that they had any kind of contact with the Black Witch. The glamorous lady who had brought Yi Qingtang her food now clasped her hands before her chest in terror and unease. Her stark white face looked at the Bishop of York as she kneeled in panic. Beloved Bishop of York, the Black Witch tried to fool me into giving her food. I did not know who she was. Can I be saved? Has she put some evil black magic spell on me? The woman was almost crying in fear. My poor child. The Bishop of York looked at the woman's heaving bosom, and his expression wavered. He put on a compassionate look. Don't worry, I have already burnt the Black Witch to death. You must return to the Vatican with me later. I will use holy water to exorcise the black magic curse, and you will be safe. Thank you, Bishop of York. The woman spoke with intense gratitude. Bishop of York, the black witch tried to kill me. Bishop, please save me. When the burly man who had fought Yi Qingtang heard that he could be brought back to the Vatican and cleansed with holy water, he immediately rushed forward. The Bishop of York frowned slightly. With that, even more people kneeled and admitted that they had been harmed by the Black Witch. The Bishop of York's expression grew grimmer and grimmer. The truth was that although there were many stories about black witches and various areas would frequently have stories of finding a black witch and putting her to death, most people only knew that black witches had a different hair and eye color. As that kind of pure black pigmentation was seldom seen in this mainland, its possessors were viewed as a foreign race, and it became proof of contact with the devil. Unless a black witch really displayed her dark arts, there was no way to ascertain their identity. This overgeneralization was merely to keep the people calm and to prevent any witch from escaping their grasp. Now, everyone was pleading to receive cleansing with holy water. Within the bar that was now engulfed in roaring flames, Yi Qingtang expressionlessly watched the blazing flames. She did not know what a so-called black witch was in this world. But she had no intention of being burnt to death by a bunch of stupid citizens. Since the god of nature had yet to issue her a mission, Yi Qingtang did not intend to waste time here. With that, Yi Qingtang raised her hand slightly. A white halo suddenly flew from her hand and rushed at the surrounding flames. The next second, she picked up the little white tiger and lightly pushed off from the ground. She leaped up and rushed out of the flames, encircling the bar. The Bishop of York, who was still communicating God's purpose to the people, suddenly heard an ear-splitting explosion. He looked up in surprise and saw a huge halo rush out from the bar and float in midair. A slender figure in the center of the white halo suddenly appeared in everyone's line of sight. The Bishop of York was completely stunned by what he saw. The surrounding citizens were terrified when they saw that the Black Witch, who was supposedly burnt to death, had now rushed into the void and was suspended in midair without anything under her feet. Undulating screams immediately rang out. Bishop of York, please save us. This Black Witch is too powerful. The Bishop of York was completely shocked. He stared stupidly at the young girl surrounded by the halo of light. Chapter 1587. White Magician 1. The halo of light surrounding Yi Qingtang seemed to interlace with the moonlight. How pure, holy, and sacred it was. This is white magic, the Bishop of York said, and his mouth was hung ajar in disbelief. It was rumored that the source of magic originally existed in this mainland, and those who possessed the source of magic were divided into two camps. One was black magic, which was used by followers of the devil, while the other was white magic, which represented a believer of the gods. However, after a massive disaster, those who had black magic and white magic died successively, and all traces of magic was wiped out from this mainland. All that people knew was just rumors regarding magic. Recently, people would always relate disasters to the black witches who once mastered black magic, while the ambassadors of the white magic never appeared ever again. Yet, at this very instant, the Bishop of York's heart palpitated fiercely. As a member of the Vatican, he had read various documents in the Vatican that recorded information on white magic. The most obvious description of white magic was none other than its color. Clean, pure white, and flawless like that of moonlight. The Bishop of York suddenly felt great pressure, and his soul even shuddered from this feeling. Wasn't the white light surrounding the girl coming from none other than the one and only white magic? Bishop of York, quickly execute your holy powers and eliminate this black witch. The crowd in the surroundings was unaware of the Bishop of York's shock as they were anxiously seeking protection. Towering above everyone, Yi Qingtang frowned slightly as she looked at the incredulously foolish people with faint impatience. She did not intend to carelessly kill anyone in this constellation world, but it would be a different story if they came down on her. At this moment, the Vatican knights in the surroundings saw Yi Qingtang, who suddenly dashed out of the fire ring, and they viewed her as a powerful enemy. Then, they immediately gripped onto their spears and threw it toward the girl in the sky. Numerous spears turned into bolts of light and flew across the sky. Yi Qingtang looked at the incoming spears emotionlessly. Lifting her sleeve slightly, she released a little spirit energy and crushed those sturdy spears into dust in a flash. Screams erupted among the crowd as they witnessed such a sight. However, the light in the Bishop of York's eyes intensified. This has to be it. I'm sure of it. Apart from the legendary source of magic, what else could achieve such tremendous power? The Vatican Knights forcefully suppressed their fear when they noticed that the Black Witch's magic became increasingly stronger. They took the bow and arrow on their backs, drew the bowstring, and prepared to attack the Black Witch in the sky. To protect their land, they shall not fear black magic. Yi Qingtang's brows slightly. She vaguely sensed that these people mistook her for some scary thing, but she did not do anything that was out of line and did not have any intention to harm them despite their harassment. Why did they still not understand? You cannot hurt them. The god of nature, who had remained mum for a long time, suddenly spoke when Yi Qingtang gradually lost her patience. Why? Yi Qingtang asked calmly. Because this is related to the mission that I'm giving you. The god of nature smiled. Trickster. Chapter 1588 White Magician 2. Just as Yi Qingtang was considering if she should just fly away, the revered Bishop of York suddenly squeezed out of the crowd with a look of excitement. He rushed to those Vatican Knights who were about to attack Yi Qingtang and frantically put down their bows by force. Stop. No one is allowed to attack without my orders. The Bishop of York berated loudly. The Vatican Knights stopped immediately as they looked at him in confusion. On the other hand, the surrounding people had a look of understanding. The Bishop of York is going to attack her personally. Bishop of York, quickly send this abominable Black Witch to hell. The Bishop of York's forehead was sweating profusely as he looked at the cold-looking girl in the sky. He took a step back and said sincerely, "Respectable white magician, please forgive us for offending you. We were blinded by stupidity and did not recognize your identity." The clamoring crowd was utterly dumbfounded. White magician? Bishop of York, are you joking? Isn't she a Black Witch? The Bishop of York frowned and said, "Black hair and black eyes are not characteristics unique to a Black Witch. Our God was the one who first selected such a hair and eye color. Afterward, the devil despicably stole all of this away and intentionally searched for servants with the same characteristics to confuse our perception." What the Bishop of York said was true, as these were clearly recorded in the documents in the Vatican. However, everything related to the god was recorded by the Vatican, and every time a girl with black hair and eyes appeared later on, most of their appearances were accompanied by disasters and epidemics. Hence, over time, there were only traces of Black Witches in the people's memory. Everyone panicked in a flash. It should be known that white magicians existed in the epoch of magic and was the closest to the darling of God. They learned to master the power of magic from God and fought against the black magicians to protect this mainland. Yi Qingtang originally intended to leave once and for all, but who would have thought that there would be such an intriguing change of events? Before this, everyone had a different attitude towards her, and Yi Qingtang could sense that they seemed to have mistaken the spirit energy around her as some other force and thus mistook her identity. Do you want to know what your mission in this world is? The god of nature asked with a laugh. Yi Qingtang faintly had an ominous feeling. The god of nature looked at the devout-looking Bishop of York and told Yi Qingtang, "Help the Supreme League Kingdom unify this mainland, and you personally have to gain everyone's faith." This time, the god of nature did not split the missions and instead gave Yi Qingtang the only mission all at once: to gain everyone's faith. After hearing this extremely familiar mission, Yi Qingtang felt that the missions that the god of nature assigned her to complete in the various constellation worlds were related in a certain way. Nonetheless, since the mission was already given, Yi Qingtang knew what she had to do next. Looking at the Bishop of York, who mistook her for a white magician, Yi Qingtang slowly descended from the sky. Her leisurely and casual movement caused a stir in the surroundings as everyone looked in astonishment at the girl who was floating in the air and surrounded by light. Chapter 1589 White Magician 3. The Bishop of York looked at Yi Qingtang, who descended quite some height. The closer she got, the more he could feel the powerful aura exuded by the lights surrounding her. The source of magic had already disappeared from this mainland for a long time. Their ancestors once said that the source of magic might not have completely disappeared from this mainland and that perhaps it was hidden in a deeper area. The Bishop of York had always thought that the ancestors said that for self-comfort, but he truly believed this saying when he saw the light around Yi Qingtang. The source of magic must not have disappeared. Otherwise, why did this white magician still have magical powers? Respectable white magician, we were rude and impetuous. Please forgive us, the Bishop of York said sincerely. Offending a white magician was a disaster for every kingdom, but winning the favor of a white magician was the supreme glory of any kingdom. Since this white magician appeared in their Supreme League kingdom, did it mean that she might have once been a member of this kingdom? The Supreme League kingdom was currently in hot water, and if they could obtain the help of the white magician, they would definitely be able to overcome this suffering and welcome the light of victory. It's all right, Yi Qingtang said indifferently. It's all right? The Bishop of York did not understand what Yi Qingtang meant, but seeing that she did not have any unusual expression, he faintly guessed that she probably did not blame them. The Bishop of York heaved a great sigh of relief immediately. The white magician is indeed a white magician. Based on the way she speaks, she is probably utilizing colloquialisms of the Epic of Magic. The Bishop of York shuddered at that thought. Could it be that the white magician before me is a lucky survivor of the massive disaster during the Epic of Magic? Wouldn't she be thousands of years old then? The Bishop of York was even more astounded. Seeing that Yi Qingtang's clothes were completely different from theirs, he believed even more strongly that his guess was right. Everyone else could not help but be astonished when they saw the Bishop of York's humble behavior. White magician? She's actually a white magician? The white magician actually ate the food that I made. I'm so lucky. A young woman in the bar was about to faint from bliss, an attitude completely unlike her earlier disgust and fear of the Black Witch. What about that? The white magician even touched me with her hands. The muscular man who was knocked down by Yi Qingtang had a completely different attitude as well. He touched his swelling head with a pleased and satisfied expression, drawing the envy of his friends. Seeing that Yi Qingtang acknowledged her identity as a white magician, the Bishop of York immediately said, "We were unaware of your arrival. Please head to the Vatican for me to express my apologies." The Bishop of York was aware of the kingdom's current difficulty and was obviously unwilling to let the powerful white magician leave. Yi Qingtang nodded and signaled the Bishop of York to lead the way. He raised his finger and pointed in the direction of the Vatican. He originally intended to invite Yi Qingtang into the carriage to head there together, but who would have thought that Yi Qingtang would simply fly there after knowing its location? Her glowing figure turned into a bolt of light under the moonlight, and she flew across the city like a shooting star. This instantly attracted the exclamation of many, and some even kneeled on the ground and made a wish silently. The Bishop of York dared not to hesitate and quickly returned with his men. Chapter 1590 White Magician for the Vatican Palace was situated in the corner of a town. Yi Qingtang learned from the Bishop of York that the town that she was in now was a small town of the Supreme League Kingdom, and most of the fit young men were sent to the front line by the Supreme League Kingdom. Previously, those muscular men she met in the bar were also going to head to the front line a few days later. Gradually, Yi Qingtang learned more clues about this world from their conversation. From the source of magic to the Epic of Magic, the disaster and the war between the Black Witches and White Magicians, as well as the war that was happening on this mainland right now. This war involved every country on this mainland regardless of their size, and no one was fortunate enough to escape it. As the kingdom that first incited the war, the Supreme League Kingdom arose the dissatisfaction of other countries, and thus the war expanded to an unimaginable scale. Yi Qingtang listened to the Bishop of York silently. Although he did not say it clearly, he secretly sounded her out if she was from the Supreme League Kingdom. After Yi Qingtang gave him a definite answer, he evidently heaved a sigh of relief and continuously lamented about the dangerous situation that the Supreme League Kingdom was currently facing. Yi Qingtang knew what the Bishop of York meant from his tearful complaints. His goal coincided with hers. It is truly regretful for the Supreme League Kingdom to face such a situation. Yi Qingtang sighed. The emperor initially only wanted to get rid of those avaricious people from the Luo kingdom and did not expect things to develop to this state. Everyone on this mainland was deceived by the people of the Luo kingdom. We will be destroyed sooner or later. The people of the Luo kingdom are the remaining evildoers left behind by the devil on this mainland. They're the best at using flowery speech to bewitch people. The Supreme League Kingdom's initial war was over a small country named the Luo Kingdom, which was stuck between various large and powerful kingdoms. The size of Luo Kingdom's territory was pitifully small and was less than the size of a province in the Supreme League Kingdom. Lord White Magician, please help the Emperor. He has become a supposed devil to all the other kingdoms, but only we know the reason behind his actions. Without the Emperor, the citizens of the Supreme League Kingdom would probably die from starvation, the Bishop of York said anxiously. I am willing to do so if it can save the citizens of the Supreme League Kingdom from disaster. Yi Qingtang concurred with the Bishop of York. The Bishop of York's eyes shone, and he expressed his gratitude to Yi Qingtang. He immediately ordered people to arrange a room for Yi Qingtang before hurrying off to contact his superior so as to personally bring this precious white magician to the emperor and gain glory for himself. The Bishop of York did want to help the kingdom, but this did not obstruct him from gaining benefits either. If he could personally send a powerful white magician to the Supreme League Kingdom's emperor, he would definitely rise in ranks in the Vatican. And he no longer needed to be stuck in this remote little town. As Yi Qingtang looked at the busy Bishop of York, her knowledge regarding this two-star constellation world deepened again. It had to be said that this world was greatly different from her original world. However, it was great that she already knew what the mission was and how to proceed with it. Yi Qingtang returned to the room that the Bishop of York prepared for her, calmed her heart down, and meditated on the ground cross-legged as she waited for good news from the Bishop of York. Chapter 1591, Allied Forces, 1. Night fell, and the people in the town were fast asleep. Dark clouds covered the moon silently as though it was a premonition of the arrival of death. In the room, Yi Qingtang, who was cultivating through meditation, suddenly opened her eyes as she heard some noise. She immediately stood up to check what happened, but the moment she opened her room, the white-robed believers were scampering all over the place with terrified expressions while making cries that sounded like knells. Yi Qingtang originally wanted to ask someone about the situation, but based on their current state, she probably would not get any answer. Thus, Yi Qingtang simply left the Vatican and headed to the area of chaos. The back of the town was guarded by a garrison, but this place was covered in smoke right now. Numerous figures were locked in a deadly battle in the darkness, and swords glistened from the reflection of the moonlight. Tall figures collapsed in the pool of blood one after another, and the mixture of the heavy blood and smoke choked everyone. General Mark, the Allied forces' troops are too great in numbers. They launched a sneak attack in the night, and we have suffered a great loss. One soldier dripping with blood spoke as he looked at the highest-ranked commander, General Mark, in the town. Mark frowned deeply as he looked at the intense battle not far away. This town was in a remote location and was extremely far away from the main battlefield. However, no one expected the Allied forces to suddenly attack this place. The abrupt attack left the guards completely unprepared. The enemy's numbers were far above theirs, and Mark's guards suffered a great loss in just the first wave of battle. General, should we retreat first? The soldier had not finished his sentence when he was immediately kicked to the floor by Mark. I will behead whoever dares to retreat. Listen to me carefully. No matter what, we must endure the Allied forces' attacks. Even if I'm left with my final breath, I will never let them invade into the land of the Supreme League Kingdom. Mark unsheathed the heavy sword on his waist with a sharp clank. My troop only has soldiers who died in a battle and absolutely no deserters. Do you all hear me? Yes, General. The soldiers were shocked by their general who pledged his life to guard the defensive line, and all of them prepared to fight with their lives on the line. Don't stand around. Polish your spears and follow me to the battlefield. General Mark waved his hand and secured his helmet before getting onto a horse in preparation to fight with his life. The soldiers guarding this place numbered fewer than 1/5 of the Allied forces' troops, and even if they fought hard to the end, it would be difficult to achieve victory. Mark was very clear that the Allied forces were fully prepared this time, and the number of mobilized troops was far more than what met the eye. He had faintly seen a black lion flag flying at the back of the battlefield, and the elite forces represented by the flag truly sent a shiver down Mark's spine. Nevertheless, Mark had not extra time to consider these factors. His homeland was right behind him, and a disastrous nightmare would fall upon them should they retreat. "Kill!" Mark yelled furiously. The shouts of the army filled the air as they charged into the battlefield with him. As Mark and the army charged into the battlefield, a slender figure slowly walked out of the town. Chapter 1592 Allied Forces. Tu Yi Qingtang's brows furrowed slightly as she watched the murderous and bloody scene before her. This town and the nearby surroundings were still peaceful before night fell. Who could have expected that this place would turn into a hell-like battlefield in just a few hours? Yi Qingtang walked toward that fierce battlefield slowly. The ferocious soldiers' eyes were bloodshot as they waved their weapons continuously and chopped the heads of their enemies. Dismembered limbs and corpses were strewn all over the ground as sounds of slaughtering filled the air. "Ah!" A sharp cry pierced the night sky. A guard who was soaked in blood had numerous wounds on his body, and his silver armor was completely stained red. A soldier from the Allied forces chased after him fiercely as though he was hunting his prey. That guard looked at most 16 years old and was still a teenager. He instinctively wanted to avoid the arrival of death, but the fear on his face froze when he saw Yi Qingtang walking toward them from the town. He could not retreat. If he did, his family and friends would be massacred. Valor rushed into his chest. His retreating footsteps stopped and changed direction. With a beastly roar and bloodshot eyes, he charged toward the incoming Allied force soldier and raised his sword to protect his homeland. "This is a battlefield." Quickly, the teen guard shouted with all his might, but the Allied force soldier slashed his shoulder in the next second, and blood spewed all over the place. The remainder of his sentence was replaced by a cry as the teen guard collapsed before Yi Qingtang and stained her pure white dress with his blood. The bloodthirsty Allied forces soldier suddenly saw a girl in strange clothes on the battlefield and noticed that the guard seemed to be protecting her earlier on. Almost instantly, the Allied forces soldier unsheathed his bloody sword, ignored the dying teen guard, and slashed at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang was slightly surprised, but she remained expressionless as she watched the incoming sword. Suddenly, she lifted her hand, and the heavy sword was trapped between her fingers easily. The Allied forces soldier was filled with astonishment. His sword seemed to be soldered into iron and would not budge an inch. "Can I kill this?" Yi Qingtang turned to look at the god of nature. The god of nature stopped her when she wanted to attack the people of the Supreme League Kingdom earlier on. The god of nature floating behind Yi Qingtang nodded and said, "Of course. They're the Allied forces, the enemy of the Supreme League Kingdom." The god of nature was very knowledgeable about this world. "Allied forces," Yi Qingtang mumbled. In all honesty, everyone on this chaotic battlefield was heavily armored, and she could not tell who was who. However, the teen in the armor from earlier on seemed to want her to leave this place. In that case, he should be a soldier of the Supreme League Kingdom. Yi Qingtang immediately distinguished the two types of armors representing the different camps. With permission from the god of nature, Yi Qingtang simply broke the sword without hesitation and thrust it into the enemy soldier's neck while he was still stunned. Blood spouted into the sky in a flash. Chapter 1593 Allied Forces 3 The wounded teen guard originally thought that the innocent girl would also be slain by the sword, but unexpectedly, he witnessed that girl killing the strong Allied force soldier casually. Yi Qingtang remained emotionless as she watched the Allied force soldier collapse before her. Bending down slightly, she helped up the teen guard who wanted to protect her and discreetly fed him a pill before gently sending him to a safe spot at the border of the battlefield. "You." A look of surprise was reflected in the youth's eyes as he stared blankly at Yi Qingtang's stunning face under the moonlight. However, in the next second, Yi Qingtang leaped up and flew toward the most intense area of conflict on the battlefield. The mission that the god of nature assigned her was to help the Supreme League Kingdom unify the mainland. Thus, its enemies could be killed. In the chaotic battlefield, a white figure suddenly appeared. The troops from the opposing camps were locked in a fierce battle, but they suddenly saw a petite girl appearing before their eyes. Before the guards could react, that girl turned into the incarnation of a death god and killed 5 allied force soldiers instantly like a bolt of lightning. Blood splattered everywhere. Before the guards could take a clear look at her face, she disappeared before their eyes once again. However, wherever she appeared, the soldiers of the allied forces died tragically without any chance to struggle or resist, just like a powerless lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Given the martial skills of this world, Yi Qingtang could easily kill thousands of people in a second with her current martial realm. However, the soldiers of the Supreme League Kingdom were entangled in this fight, and Yi Qingtang was worried that she may accidentally kill a few Supreme League Kingdom soldiers. Helpless, she could only control her powers to prevent the Supreme League Kingdom soldiers from being harmed. Yet even so, her appearance completely turned the tables around. On the battlefield, General Mark was on a horse as he slashed his sword around and killed numerous enemies. However, at this very instant, his body was covered with many injuries, and his breathing gradually turned irregular. The guards fighting alongside Mark were extremely worn out as well, and their expressions darkened as they noticed the continual decline in guards. "General Mark, we can't fight on like this anymore. Otherwise, all of our brothers will die here." "General, to hell with being afraid of them. Even if our entire troop is wiped out, we must not retreat." Mark roared in a deep tone. Just as everyone was completely disheartened, they suddenly realized that the allied forces around them seemed to be decreasing continuously. What's happening? Could it be that the troops in the nearby town found out about the war and rushed over to provide reinforcements? Impossible. The nearest town to us is about 2 to 3 days' journey away from us. It's impossible for them to find. "General Mark, look." A guard seized an opportunity and shouted loudly while pointing in the air above the battlefield with his sword. Mark looked in the direction, only to see a slender figure shuttling through the battlefield like a bolt of lightning. Blood splattered every area she passed by, and countless allied forces soldiers were killed by that white streak of lightning. Chapter 1594 Brutal Little Fellow 1. Who is that? General Mark widened his eyes in shock. That girl isn't wielding any weapon, yet she can slaughter strong soldiers so easily? Her simple and light movements made it seem as effortless as plucking a flower. Let's not care who she is first. Brothers, let's kill. Let's kill this group of bastards when they're in chaos. As though he was inspired by the girl's aggressive murderous intent, General Mark shouted loudly and led his remaining guards to counterattack fiercely. The Allied forces, which originally held an absolute advantage, seemed to be in hell right now. They launched the first wave of attack with 5 times the amount of soldiers and originally thought they could easily eliminate the guards in this city. Yet, just as they were going to drive the guards to death, a devil-like girl suddenly appeared on their battlefield, and her fair hand was like the scythe of the god of death, reaping all their souls. There was a huge outburst of chaos among the Allied forces as their troops were forced to retreat by that girl. However, when they finally pulled some distance away from the guards, that was the true arrival of a nightmare. Mark was about to continue pursuing them, but he suddenly saw the girl leaping up and floating in the air with a huge black flame blazing behind her. In the next second, her slim fingers gently pointed at the Allied forces, and endless black flames instantly turned into a massive dragon and lunged forward. With a deafening roar, thousands of Allied forces' soldiers were engulfed by the black flame. The two forces had finally separated, otherwise, she did not dare to use any powers. Yi Qingtang sighed softly. General Mark and the rest who witnessed this scene were completely dumbfounded as they watched the girl in the sky with their jaws hanging wide open. "Go! Hurry! Bring someone to check this lattice identity." There was a bright fire in General Mark's eyes. That girl seemed to be only attacking the Allied forces, and if she was part of the Supreme League Kingdom, they probably would be able to survive this war. The Allied forces had no choice but to retreat due to the black flame, and the guards cheered loudly at the sight. General Mark immediately brought his injured soldiers to seek medical treatment while a group of guards were sent to contact the mysterious and formidable girl. When Yi Qingtang came to the town, she only appeared near the bar, and only those 100 people there had seen her. These guards thus naturally did not recognize her. "Friend, our general wishes to meet you," a guard said. Yi Qingtang nodded lightly and immediately followed the group of guards to General Mark's base camp. In the headquarters, General Mark had already taken off his armor and was being bandaged for his wounds. Upon receiving the soldier's report of Yi Qingtang's arrival, Mark immediately told the medic to leave and stood up as a petite girl walked into his sight. Previously, General Mark did not see the girl's looks clearly, but seeing her now, he realized that she was even smaller than expected and seemed to be about the height of a 14-year-old child. The more this was the case, the more surprised General Mike was over Yi Qingtang's ferocity on the battlefield. Chapter 1595 Brutal Little Fellow 2. Your performance on the battlefield was extremely stunning. May I know if you're a citizen of the Supreme League Kingdom? General Mark asked straight to the point. He did not have any more time. While the Allied forces retreated temporarily, this was only their first wave of attack, and General Mark was very clear that this night was destined to be a sleepless one. The Allied forces definitely would not give up on the invasion so easily, and the bugle call for the second wave would sound very soon. General Mark needed to confirm the background of this mysterious girl as soon as possible. Yi Qingtang looked at General Mark's anxious expression and replied, "Yes." Almost instantly, General Mark heaved a clear sigh of relief, and the smile on his face deepened. "Friend, tonight's war was all thanks to your help. I knew that the citizens of the Supreme League Kingdom were not craven and cowardly. The Allied forces have launched a sneak attack on us today, and the number of guards that we have may not be able to stop their plan. My dear friend, are you willing to play a part in protecting our town by helping us resist the Allied forces' invasion?" General Mark looked at Yi Qingtang solemnly. After witnessing this girl's ability for himself, he was increasingly certain that he required her help. "If you're willing to help us to overcome this crisis, I believe the people in the town would be extremely grateful for your bravery." He added on, "Sure." Yi Qingtang agreed to General Mark's request without any hesitation. Smiles almost flooded out from General Mark's eyes. "May I know what your name is?" Yi Qingtang replied, "You can call me Tang." "Tang? What a nice name." General Mark smiled. Almost right after their conversation ended, a piercing bugle call rang from outside, and a guard rushed in hurriedly. "General Mark, this is bad. The Allied forces are launching an attack again, and the Glorious Lion Knights are leading the battle this time." Glorious Lion Knights. General Mark frowned instantly at the sound of this name. What he was most worried about still happened eventually. Is there anything special about the Glorious Lion Knights? Yi Qingtang sensed General Mark's abnormality and asked curiously. Seeing that Yi Qingtang was so young, General Mark struggled for a moment and did not dare to lie to her. "Tang, the Glorious Lion Knights is one of the 5 great elite forces of the Allied forces and is the trump army of the Qin Dragon Kingdom. They once wiped out a troop of 10,000 soldiers with just 1,000 of them, and each one of them is extremely powerful and brave." General Mark's expression turned ugly. "When I saw the Glorious Lion Knights flag just now, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Logically speaking, a force like the Glorious Lion Knights should be at the other battlefields, but unexpectedly, they actually came here. I'm afraid the Allied forces are determined to conquer this place." At this moment, General Mark's good mood from inviting Yi Qingtang to participate in the battle vanished completely. He was very worried that this petite girl would withdraw after hearing what he said, but he realized that her clean face seemed to remain emotionless. It was as though she completely did not realize the power of the Glorious Lion Knights. Chapter 1596 Brutal Little Fellow 3 The bugle call from outside became increasingly louder. General Mark did not dare to hesitate any longer and immediately put on his armor before leading the soldiers to the battlefield with Yi Qingtang following behind them. On the battlefield, the troops of the Allied forces were densely packed, and with one glance, one could tell that there were multiple times more troops than before. General Mark's heart turned cold with just a look, and his expression darkened even further when he saw the 5,000 soldiers in golden armor in the center of the Allied forces' troops. Golden armor. That's the Glorious Lion Knights' battle armor. The Glorious Lion Knights actually deployed 5,000 people. It must be known that 5,000 glorious Lion Knights could rival 50,000 regular soldiers, and apart from these 5,000 soldiers, the Allied forces still had over 100,000 soldiers from other troops. The guards at General Mark's side amounted to only 20,000 people, and he lost half of them from the first battle. Yet there were 10 times more enemies standing right before their eyes now. The death bell seemed to be looming over the guards' heads and was ready to ring for their deaths any time. Archers, prepare. General Mark suppressed his fear and shouted loudly. With his command, thousands of archers pulled their bows, and arrows flew toward the Allied forces' camp as General Mark raised his hand. No matter what, they must give it their all. Why are they not defending? A guard who just shot an arrow was rather surprised when he saw that the Allied forces did not take any defensive actions despite thousands of arrows being shot at them. It was as though they completely did not see the arrows. General Mark frowned slightly as well as he was not clear about the Allied forces' situation. But just as confusion clouded the guards, 5 black beams suddenly shot out from the glorious Lion Knights' camp. When the arrows reached the front of the Allied forces, the 5 beams formed a gigantic black screen under the moonlight. All the arrows turned into dust instantly upon contact with the black screen. That is black magic. There are actually black witches hidden among the glorious Lion Knights. General Mark's eyes sharpened. Only then did he realize that there were 5 people donned in black robes among the glorious Lion Knights. Those people had very small frames and were concealed in the troops. If one did not look carefully, they simply could not spot those people in the night. The words, black magic, loomed above everyone's head like a nightmare. No one expected that the Allied forces actually accepted the servants of the devil. If the guards were almost on the brink of a breakdown by the enemy's numbers, the appearance of the 5 black witches was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Everyone seemed to have seen their own corpses on the ground. It's over. They're completely hopeless. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, glorious Lion Knights, black witches. How terrifying their opponents were in this battle. Even General Mark's complexion turned white. Don't be afraid. We are soldiers of the Supreme League Kingdom. We will protect our homeland with our lives. General Mark shouted in a low tone in hopes of dispersing the fear among the army. However, the seeds of uneasiness had already spread silently. Those are black witches. They possess black magic? How can we possibly be their opponent? Chapter 1597. Brutal little fellow. For the guards were in a state of panic. It was at this moment that they realized that the first wave earlier on was just an appetizer from the Allied forces and that this was the true battle. General Mark's expression turned uglier by the minute, and he immediately commanded the archers. Continue to shoot. Aim straight at the 5 black witches. The archers pulled their bows with trembling fingers. All the arrows that were released were destroyed by the black magic of the black witches. The ray of hope diminished bit by bit. Laughter rang among the Allied forces, and traveling through the air into General Mark's ears, their laughter was laced with sarcasm and ridicule. General Mark clenched his sword tightly as he looked at the soldiers who lost all morale. Suddenly, he flipped up onto his horse and was prepared to lead by example and charge toward the Allied forces' camp. They could be defeated but could not be afraid. Just as General Mark's horse galloped for a few meters, a slender figure slowly passed by above him like a feather, and the galloping horse seemed to be placated by a certain force as it suddenly came to a stop. General Mark, do you want those 5 black witches? Yi Qingtang gradually landed before General Mark as she gazed at the 5 black witches concealed among the glorious Lion Knights' troops from afar. She vividly remembered that in the evening, she was still mistaken to be a black witch by the people here, so she thought that a black witch was a very powerful figure. However, looking at that black screen, Yi Qingtang felt speechless for some reason. Tang? The black witch's magic is very terrifying. You're still young. General Mark was a little regretful now. Had he known that there was such a frightening number of Allied forces and that there were also the glorious Lion Knights and Black Witches, he definitely would not pull this innocent girl into this battle. While this girl was powerful, she was only one person. She was not the opponent of thousands of soldiers. Yi Qingtang ignored General Mark's shouts and slowly walked toward the Allied forces' camp. The howling gale lifted the edges of her robe, making her look extremely surreal. "General Mark, please remain here." Yi Qingtang's voice traveled into General Mark's ears along with the wind, and he was slightly taken aback. "Tang, what are you doing? Come back quickly." General Mark roared loudly. Those fearful guards could not help but widen their eyes in disbelief as they watched the petite girl walking toward the battlefield by herself fearlessly. What were they fearful of? Even such a young girl stood up so bravely, yet they were hiding behind like losers. They could not be like this. Fear gushed out of the guards almost instinctively. They did not wish to see a girl being forced to fight the war alone because of their cowardice. Yi Qingtang was originally quite happy that both sides were a large distance apart, thus, she did not worry about accidentally hurting them. However, she realized that the guards began to charge over, and she had no choice but to move faster. Isn't it good to just stay there? Yi Qingtang was truly afraid that they would be locked in a battle, which would make it difficult for her to attack. Thus, she simply decided to increase her pace and eliminate the Allied forces before her at once. However, the moment Yi Qingtang was about to attack, the Allied forces that initially encircled the guards from not far away actually retreated on a large scale for some reason. The sudden retreat was truly unexpected. What is going on? Yi Qingtang halted slightly and observed the Allied forces' movement. Chapter 1598 Kingdom Fortress. No one expected the Allied forces to retreat. However, within a short time, the Allied forces had retreated by several meters and even sped up. Shortly thereafter, the large troops swiftly vanished from the sight of Yi Qingtang and the others. Yi Qingtang was speechless. The large group of guardsmen who had charged forward could not help but cheer when they saw the Allied forces retreat. General Mark heaved a huge sigh of relief. He swung himself off the horse and hurriedly walked towards Yi Qingtang. "Tang, you were too impulsive just now." Although he spoke sternly, his tone was filled with concern and anxiety. General Mark took a deep breath, and his expression grew warmer. "Tang, you are really the bravest girl I have ever met." General Mark had taken in the guardsmen's reaction to the situation at a glance. The enemy's strength had frightened them into retreating. Otherwise, General Mark would not have charged into the battlefield by himself. But General Mark had not expected that Yi Qingtang, the petite young girl who had just joined them, would also dare to face the enemy head-on. If Yi Qingtang had not joined the battle, the guardsmen would have huddled up and refused to advance. At that thought, General Mark looked at Yi Qingtang's glittering eyes. He took a deep breath and seemed to come to some sort of decision. "Tang, your skills and courage are commendable. I do not know why the Allied forces suddenly retreated. I am unable to leave this place, but I will ask someone to bring my letter of recommendation with you to Kingdom Fortress. I will recommend you to His Majesty, the King." Yi Qingtang was startled. She did not expect General Mark to recommend her to the Supreme League Kingdom's king straight away. However, this would allow her to complete her mission more quickly anyway. At that thought, Yi Qingtang said, "Thank you, General Mark." No need to thank me. You are an outstanding young lady. Right now, the kingdom needs people like you," General Mark said with a loud laugh. He rallied his troops and sent someone to keep a close eye on the Allied troops' movements. Then, he arranged for a vice-general to accompany Yi Qingtang to Kingdom Fortress while carrying the letter that he had personally written. Yi Qingtang had intended to have a word with the Bishop of York. After all, the Bishop of York also seemed to want to recommend her. However, she learned from the other believers that the Bishop of York had gone to another city and would not be back for a few days. Yi Qingtang left a message with the believers and headed for the Kingdom Fortress with General Mark's vice-general. A few days later, Bishop of York, who was happily prepared to hitch himself to Yi Qingtang's rising star, returned only to discover that she had left. Yi Qingtang and the vice-general hurried on their horses towards Kingdom Fortress. After the Supreme League Kingdom declared war, Kingdom Fortress became the biggest fortress at the front line. It was personally defended by the Supreme League Kingdom's current king and contained the best troops in the kingdom. This was the safest but most dangerous place. When the vice-general arrived at Kingdom Fortress, He immediately hurried Yi Qingtang to the palace to meet His Majesty, the king. Yi Qingtang's black hair and dark eyes attracted a lot of attention along the way. However, their reaction was not as exaggerated as that of people in the first city. This was so especially in Kingdom Fortress, where the soldiers merely took a look at Yi Qingtang before going about their own preparations. Chapter 1599. Kingdom Fortress 2. The stern-looking Supreme League King was sitting on his throne in the huge palace. The hall was flanked with dozens of tall armored men wearing cloaks. Yi Qingtang followed the vice-general, who immediately handed General Mark's letter to the king. The king swiftly read through it before slowly raising his eyes to look at the unusually petite young girl standing in the middle of the hall. "You're Tang?" "Yes, Your Majesty," replied Yi Qingtang. The king nodded slightly. "Mark's letter says that you displayed extraordinary skill when the Allied forces suddenly attacked. You helped to force the Allied troops to retreat. The Supreme League Kingdom had not received news of the Allied forces' sudden attack. Mark's city was remote, but was one of Supreme League Kingdom's crucial passes. The king had personally sent Mark to hold the pass. If the Allied forces' scheme had succeeded, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Fortunately, the danger had been averted. Otherwise, the Supreme League Kingdom would be hard-pressed on all sides." As the king spoke, the dozens of armored men flanking the hall glanced blankly at Yi Qingtang. They did not think much of Mark's praises of Yi Qingtang. After the king finished speaking, he beckoned to a nearby servant. A moment later, the servant respectfully walked over with a tray. The group of men, who had not paid much attention to Yi Qingtang's arrival, now looked surprised when they saw what was on the tray. A gray badge carved with the emblem of an eagle lay quietly on the tray. Their expressions stiffened when they saw the emblem, but they could not express any other emotions in front of the king. "You have lent your strength to the Supreme League Kingdom. As the king of the Supreme League Kingdom, I will now make you a Kingdom Knight. I hope that you will contribute greatly to the kingdom in the future." The king spoke slowly as he glanced at the badge on the tray. In his letter, Mark had highly commended Yi Qingtang for her role in the battle. But the king only saw a young girl before him. She did not seem like a valiant and powerful figure. Even so, her contributions alone justified Yi Qingtang receiving some kind of title. Gifting the title of a Kingdom Knight was the way in which the Supreme League Kingdom recognized powerful knights. It represented strength and loyalty and, more importantly, was a status symbol. A person who became a Kingdom Knight could remain by the king's side to guard him. A Kingdom Knight was the highest status symbol among the knights. The eagle badge in the tray was the emblem of the Kingdom Knights. The dozens of armored men in the hall all wore identical eagle badges on their chests. It was an honor they were proud of. Yet now, the king was giving it to this skinny young girl. The moment the king presented her with the badge, the faces of the Kingdom Knights contorted. Kingdom Knight? Yi Qingtang was not familiar with this world's terms. However, as long as she was allowed to participate in battles, she was happy to accept it. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Yi Qingtang bowed slowly. The king nodded, satisfied. The Supreme League Kingdom was currently in a precarious situation. They needed powerful figures who could boost morale. Chapter 1600. Kingdom Fortress 3. The king was not concerned about Yi Qingtang's abilities. He gave her the title of Kingdom Knight firstly because she had made a contribution to the war, and secondly to motivate other warriors in the kingdom. This signaled to them that if they were willing to contribute their strength to the kingdom would reward their loyalty. The king gestured for Yi Qingtang to pin the Kingdom Knight badge on herself. When she pinned on the badge, her keen senses perceived the unhappy looks from the other Kingdom Knights. "All right, you may leave. If you need anything, you can discuss it with the others." After the king finished dealing with this matter, his focus returned to the battlefield before him. Yi Qingtang and the vice-general exited the hall. The other Kingdom Knights also left the hall. "Knight Tang, General Mark would be delighted to know that you've become a Kingdom Knight," the vice-general said to Yi Qingtang with a smile. Yi Qingtang laughed. "It's all thanks to General Mark that I had an opportunity to serve the kingdom." The vice-general was about to say something when a slightly mocking voice suddenly rang in their ears. "Serve the kingdom? Knight Tang says it so casually." The voice was now clearly dripping with sarcasm. Yi Qingtang raised her head slightly and saw that the kingdom knights who were in the hall earlier were now blocking their way. Each one of the dozen knights was tall and imposing. Under the weight of their armor, they looked even more impressive. Compared to their tall physiques, the petite Yi Qingtang looked to be no more than a teenager. She did not even come up to their chests. "Knight Tang, how old are you?" 14? A golden-haired, blue-eyed kingdom knight dismissively gave her the once-over. His eyes were filled with disdain. "Looking at your size, I bet you can't even handle a sword. How can you speak of serving the kingdom on the battlefield? Please, your words are too harsh." A brown-haired rider shook his head in disagreement. "Tang is still young. How can she enter the battlefield? She can remain in the fortress with the cooks to prepare our meals so that we have more strength to kill on the battlefield. Isn't that also a way of serving the kingdom?" The brown-haired knight seemed to be speaking up for Yi Qingtang, but his words were even more jarring. When they were in the hall just now, they were incredulous when they saw the king making Yi Qingtang a kingdom knight. Did people know what a kingdom knight was? It was the ultimate symbol of knighthood. These men who had become kingdom knights were proud of their titles. They were an example to all knights. They had absolute power. They had acquired the much-coveted title of Kingdom Knight after loyally serving the kingdom for many years, battling enemies with all their might, and making numerous contributions. But now, this weak young girl had actually acquired the same title. This was a huge insult to them. Yi Qingtang's existence besmirched the title of Kingdom Knight. Yi Qingtang looked expressionlessly at the Kingdom Knights, whose eyes were filled with hostility. She could clearly sense the displeasure radiating from them. This sensation was already present in the hall. 1601 Kingdom Knights. 1 The Vice-General was displeased when he heard the Kingdom Knights mocking her. However, with his lowly status, he could not quarrel with the Kingdom Knights, so he had no choice but to respond humbly. "Say, Toby, don't you think she looks rather weird? She doesn't look like us and has black hair and those black eyes. Why do I feel she looks like the black witches in stories?" Another kingdom knight said jeeringly as he sized up Yi Qingtang. If she's really a black witch, then she might be useful. But not every black-haired and dark-eyed girl is a black witch. As far as I know, black witches are all very tall, not like this short and skinny fellow," Toby said mockingly. When the king was talking to Yi Qingtang in the Great Hall, they had heard some of what Yi Qingtang had done in the border town. However, they felt that she had not done anything to deserve such a great reward. Yi Qingtang being made a kingdom knight would lower the status of the kingdom knights in the hearts of the people. If word got out, they would all be associated with Yi Qingtang, and the title of kingdom knights would become a laughingstock among the people. At that moment, the bugle call signaling a battle suddenly sounded. The group of discontented kingdom knight heard the bugle call, and their expressions changed. They immediately put on their helmets and dashed towards the battlefield. Yi Qingtang was about to follow them, but before she had advanced a few steps, the brown-haired knight blocked her way. "You have no right to enter the battlefield if you do not receive an appointment from the king." Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. The knight laughed coldly. "There's no need to pretend to be brave. You must be inwardly rejoicing that you don't need to enter the blood-soaked battlefield. You should be happily hiding under your blankets and laughing to yourself. Be a good girl and go prepare some food for us. Leave the battle to the real knights on the battlefield. It's not a place for a little girl like you to play house." I guess if she really entered the battlefield, she'd be so frightened she'd burst into tears. The knights roared with laughter as they left. They made no attempt to hide their disdain for Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang remained in the same spot. She coldly watched the knights stride away. The vice-general, who was watching from the sidelines, was very worried. He anxiously watched Yi Qingtang's profile and was afraid that she would be offended by the snide remarks. Yi Qingtang had just been made a kingdom knight, but these kingdom knights had been fighting for many years and were extremely skilled. The vice-general felt that if Yi Qingtang had any disagreement with them, she would probably be at a severe disadvantage. "Knight Tang?" the vice-general asked tentatively. Yi Qingtang calmly looked at him and said, "I cannot enter the battlefield without the king's order?" Yes, the vice-general nodded. But the explosion of rage that the vice-general anticipated never appeared. Yi Qingtang had noted the direction of the fortress exit, and now she turned and walked towards it by herself. The vice-general was stunned when he saw that Yi Qingtang was not angry. He immediately followed her. Fuck, those people are really annoying. The little white tiger, who was cuddled in Yi Qingtang's arms, could not help but mutter. Ignore them, Yi Qingtang said calmly. She was here to complete the mission that the god of nature had given to her, not to bluster and swagger around with the others. If they could make her angry with just a few words, then the 300 years she lived in her past life were all in vain. Chapter 1602, Kingdom Knights 2, also. The god of nature was floating behind her. He had stopped Yi Qingtang when she was about to strike the Supreme League Kingdom people in that city. If Yi Qingtang guessed correctly, the god of nature did not approve of her attacking the people in this kingdom. She did not want to fail her mission because of a few inconsequential people. The spirit energy in this world was not very rich. If Yi Qingtang cultivated here, it would not have any great effect. Her cultivation speed would be about the same as that in the Gong Valley of Taiyuan Valley, but a little slower. What Yi Qingtang really wanted was to exchange the points gained in the one-star constellation for a reward that could increase her powers. Yi Qingtang did not waste any time. After returning to her room, she immediately sat cross-legged to cultivate. She would grasp every single chance to improve her abilities. The roaring sounds from the battlefield were carried by the wind into the fortress. As the minutes ticked by, Yi Qingtang sensed the energy in her body changing. Although the change was slow, it was a unique sensation. Yi Qingtang vaguely sensed that in the world of constellations, not only could she use the spirit energy in the various worlds to speed up her cultivation, but the energy in her body seemed to become richer while she was cultivating. Although it was not a tremendous change, it caused a continuous qualitative transformation. If the qualitative transformation of the energy in her body reached a certain stage, even if she was only at the first heaven of the heavenly venerate realm, she could easily beat opponents who were in a higher cultivation realm. Yi Qingtang herself was unsure when this qualitative transformation would reach that stage. Days sank into night. The intense battle only ended late at night. The soldiers who had fought hard to press back the enemy now returned to the fortress. The kingdom knights who had been fighting hard all day also returned. After a day of intense battle, they were even more irritated with Yi Qingtang, who had somehow become a kingdom knight for no reason. Their titles were hard-won, obtained by fighting one battle after another. But it was different for her. In the following days, the allied forces attacked continually. As one battle followed another, the king seemed to have completely forgotten about Yi Qingtang's existence. He did not issue any orders for her to join the battle. All this made the kingdom knights even unhappier about Yi Qingtang. While they were putting their lives on the line to fight the enemy, this girl was resting safely behind the fortress walls, enjoying their protection. But her title was the same as theirs. I'm fed up with that parasite. What does she do besides stay in her room and enjoy the privileges of being a kingdom knight? Even the grooms in the stable are more useful than her. A few discontented kingdom knights charged towards Yi Qingtang's room. After a few days of tempering, the energy in Yi Qingtang's body had become even richer. The spirit energy in the two-star constellation world was about the same as that of the one-star constellation, but it was many times better at tempering her inner energy. Yi Qingtang was delighted by this discovery. Before Yi Qingtang could calm down from this discovery, someone violently kicked her room door open. The kingdom knights, whom Yi Qingtang had met in the Great Hall, appeared at her door. The few who had mocked her were all present. At that moment, their eyes were filled with undisguised hatred. Chapter 1603, Kingdom Knights 3. Tang, you really know how to enjoy yourself, huh? Do you feel safe hiding here? The blonde knight Toby looked mockingly at Yi Qingtang, who was in her room. Get out, Yi Qingtang said expressionlessly. She could ignore their ignorant jabs, but she did not like others invading her personal space. Oh, the little lamb has a temper? Toby laughed coldly. He completely ignored Yi Qingtang's order. Tang, since you are now a kingdom knight, shouldn't you participate in the kingdom knight's training? Another kingdom knight was up to no good. Yi Qingtang stood up. Where? What? Toby and the others evidently did not understand Yi Qingtang's words. "Where is the training?" asked Yi Qingtang. Although Yi Qingtang had been cultivating for the past few days, she had asked the vice-general to petition the king to allow her to join in the battle as soon as possible. However, the king seemed to be ignoring her petition. Yi Qingtang did not know what else to do, so she intended to have a good talk with the king about participating in the battle after she finished cultivating. But this group of arrogant kingdom knights had come knocking again. The god of nature had said that she must not casually hurt the citizens of the Supreme League Kingdom, but if she was sparring during a training session, it should not be an issue. For the past few days, they had often sought her out to make trouble. Besides mocking and disparaging her, they had crossed the line by barging into her room today. Yi Qingtang was good-tempered, but she would not permit them to act like that. Toby and the others immediately understood Yi Qingtang's meaning. They exchanged glances and saw scheming looks in each other's eyes. Because they were all kingdom knights, they could not find any excuse to teach this parasite a lesson. Now, she had stupidly given them an opening. They must allow her to fully experience the power of a kingdom knight. With that, Toby and the others immediately led Yi Qingtang to the court where the kingdom knights usually trained. Many kingdom knights were already training in the court. The sounds of slaughtering and the clash of weapons could be heard continually. When Yi Qingtang entered the court, the kingdom knights who were in the middle of their training simultaneously fixed their gaze on her. Their hands stopped moving. "Why is she here?" someone asked with a frown. Yi Qingtang had been in the fortress for many days, but she could not fight without the king's orders. This had made them even more disgruntled. They had never seen Yi Qingtang's shadow cross the court. She had not trained at all. Who knows? Perhaps Toby and the others brought her here. That fellow Toby has brains. I have a bone to pick with this Tang fellow. Does she really think that she's here in the fortress to enjoy herself like some lord's daughter? She doesn't even come for training. How can someone like her be fit to be a kingdom knight? What's she doing here? Embarrassing herself? Do you think she can even pick up a weapon with her little arms and legs? A kingdom knight coldly glanced at the weapons on display. As kingdom knights, they were much stronger than ordinary soldiers. All their weapons were forged by special craftsmen, and just those alone were several times heavier than what ordinary people would use. Chapter 1604, Parasite 1. Toby and the others led Yi Qingtang to the square. Shooting a knowing look to his friends nearby, he subsequently turned to look at Yi Qingtang and spoke. "This is our training grounds." Just as Yi Qingtang looked up, a bolt of light suddenly shot toward her. With a clang, an arrow narrowly grazed past Yi Qingtang's cheek and stuck into a pillar behind her. "Sorry, you're too small. I didn't see you just now. I'm really sorry." A tall and well-built male who wielded a bow seemed to be apologetic toward Yi Qingtang. Although he seemed to be apologizing, there was absolutely no sign of remorse or regret. Instead, his face was full of smiles. "Did you see that? That parasite is stunned. She's not even moving an inch. That was really nasty of Joseph. But I like it." Ha! All the kingdom knights guffawed at the scene before them, clearly treating Yi Qingtang as a clown they could make fun of. Toby added on as well. "Everyone is focused on their training in the training grounds. Tang, your head's too small, and it'll be very easy for someone to lose sight of you. You must be careful. Otherwise, you have no one to blame if you are accidentally injured." Accidentally injured? The little white tiger in Yi Qingtang's arms gritted its sharp fangs. That arrow was clearly aimed at Yi Qingtang. This group of people simply had ill intentions when they called Yi Qingtang to the square. Tang really hasn't grown up. She's carrying a little animal wherever she goes. Toby and the others laid their eyes on the little white tiger in Yi Qingtang's arms. In this world where white tigers did not exist, they instinctively assumed it to be a strange-looking big cat. A petite girl carried a big cat around wherever she went. How was this what a kingdom knight should look like? If more people saw Yi Qingtang, the kingdom knight title would be tarnished by her. As that thought surfaced in everyone's minds, their dissatisfaction toward Yi Qingtang intensified. Yi Qingtang was utterly expressionless as she watched the scene before her. Toby and the rest thought that Yi Qingtang was dumbstruck and were very pleased with this outcome. They wanted to let her know how powerful the Kingdom Knights were and that she was not worthy of having such a title. Tang, you haven't been to training these few days. Why don't I spar with you as a warm-up? Toby asked while harboring evil intentions. The Kingdom Knights in the surrounding cheered. Toby, you must go easy on her. Otherwise, this little fellow's bones will be crushed by your punch. Huh, Toby, why must you make things difficult for Tang? Didn't you see that she's about to cry from the shock? Yi Qingtang, who was about to cry from the shock, looked at the sarcastic faces around her. Without a word, she placed the little white tiger down and turned to look at Toby. How do you want to spar? Toby, Tang has already agreed to it. You must guide her well. Everyone erupted into laughter as in their eyes, Yi Qingtang was just courting death. They could make use of this opportunity to teach this parasite a lesson. Toby's smile was exceptionally mean as he looked at Yi Qingtang. Anything. However, Tang, you know that we use real weapons and are very serious when we train. Having some accidental injuries will be unavoidable. Chapter 1605, Parasite, 2. Everyone's eyes were fixed on both Toby and Yi Qingtang at this instant as they waited for Toby to teach the parasite a lesson. They wanted to show her the powers of a true Kingdom Knight and let her know that she was simply unworthy of the same title. Toby sized up Yi Qingtang nonchalantly. His eyes were full of contempt as he picked up his spear and made a few strokes in front of Yi Qingtang. In the next second, Toby's strokes became extremely fast. Every move was aimed at Yi Qingtang, yet all of these imposing and frightening moves coincidentally missed her body. Even if one was not pierced by it, the sight of a spear striking at someone numerous times was already terrifying enough. Yet Yi Qingtang remained rooted to the ground as she glanced at those attacks emotionlessly. The surrounding Kingdom Knights erupted in laughter when they saw that Yi Qingtang did not move. Toby, go easy on her. Don't you see that she has already turned white in fear? How pitiful. Tang probably does not dare to move at all now, right? The surrounding Kingdom Knights looked at Yi Qingtang scornfully. How dare she carry the Kingdom Knight title with such timidity? If she were really sent to the battlefield, she would just pee in her pants out of fear, wouldn't she? With a pleased expression, Toby looked at Yi Qingtang and said, We go through such training every day. Tang, since you have already become a Kingdom Knight, you must come here every day and train with us. They would take great care of this sheltered girl every day and teach her proper Kingdom Knight bearing. By then, even if they did not initiate it, Yi Qingtang would make a request to the king for her to leave due to the inability to withstand such training. Surrounded by the mockery, Yi Qingtang remained emotionless, however. Her eyes passed by each scornful face and eventually landed on Toby. Can we start now? Toby raised a brow. Of course. You can surrender any time when you can't stand it. Yi Qingtang did not say a word. While facing his surrounding comrades, Toby shrugged before lifting his spear in the air as though to display his strength. Afterward, he looked at Yi Qingtang indifferently and said, I'm going to start, okay? He sounded like he was teasing an immature child. The moment he finished his sentence, Toby directly struck at Yi Qingtang with his spear. Yi Qingtang remained motionless, and it was as though she did not notice Toby's attack at all. To everyone else, Yi Qingtang was dumbstruck and did not even have the courage to flee. But just as Toby's spear was about to stab into Yi Qingtang's shoulder, Yi Qingtang suddenly raised her right hand and grabbed the spearhead. In just a moment, Toby's move seemed to come to a standstill as he maintained his attacking stance without moving. Toby was slightly taken aback, but the clueless Kingdom Knights around him continued to guffaw. Toby, isn't it too obvious that you went easy on her? However, only Toby himself knew what was going on. His spear seemed to be stuck in a huge mountain, and he could not move it no matter how much strength he put in. What is going on? Toby almost used all his strength. His face was flushed, and his veins were about to pop. But it was still useless. Chapter 1606, Parasite, 3. Yi Qingtang looked up slightly and saw a popping vein on Toby's forehead. Then, she flipped her hand that was grabbing the spear and lifted it with force. Argh! With a surprised shout, Toby was lifted up entirely with his spear, and before he could react in time, Yi Qingtang abruptly released her grip on the spear. Boom! A loud and deep crash echoed in the surroundings, and Toby crashed to the ground violently as his head buzzed. The loud sound shattered the laughter in the surroundings. Looks of surprise appeared on everyone's faces as they looked at Toby, who was grimacing in pain. What happened? Joseph and the others exchanged a look. Why did they not understand the situation before them anymore? To Toby, it felt as if his organs were shattered as he turned pale from the pain. He slowly looked up in shock at Yi Qingtang, who remained at the same spot. Toby, what's with you? Did you not eat today? You can't even defeat a little girl? The kingdom knights who were waiting to see Yi Qingtang make a joke out of herself were evidently displeased. They would never believe that Toby was really thrown to the ground by such a frail and weak-looking girl. Apart from going easy on her, they could not think of any other possibility. The ridicule of his comrades rang in his ears, causing him to turn pale immediately. Suddenly, he stood up and forcefully swung his fist toward Yi Qingtang's head with a growl. Damn it! How dare this parasite embarrass me in front of everyone? Yi Qingtang did not avoid Toby's punch and instead met his fist straight on with hers. The instant the two fists collided, Toby's face distorted in pain. There was a sharp and crisp sound as a large force sent Toby flying away. Ah! Toby grabbed onto his fist as he retreated a distance. Dripping in cold sweat, his distorted palm hung beside his body, and it was evident that his bones were crushed. However, Yi Qingtang's fist seemed completely unharmed, fair, clean, and perfect as before. Everyone at the scene was stunned. If they felt that the previous scene happened because Toby went easy on her, then now, with both fists meeting each other, Toby's fist was fractured from the impact while Yi Qingtang's was completely intact. My hand! Clutching his distorted hand, Toby was drenched in cold sweat from the excruciating pain, which almost drove him berserk. Joseph and the rest returned to their senses from Toby's cries, and two kingdom knights hurriedly brought the injured Toby to receive medical attention. Tang, you were too ruthless. Do you want to kill Toby? The kingdom knights immediately berated Yi Qingtang loudly when they saw their longtime comrade injured. Toby practiced with you out of kindness, but you were evil enough to attack him so fiercely. Yi Qingtang glanced at the kingdom knights and felt that they were more than ridiculous. They acknowledged Toby and felt that she was at fault for injuring Toby, but if the injured one was her, they probably would humiliate and ridicule her endlessly. They were clearly the ones who wanted to teach her a lesson first, but now that their man was being taught a lesson instead, they wanted to play the blame game? Chapter 1607, Fight the War, 1. Injuries are inevitable in sparring. Isn't this what you all said? Yi Qingtang asked. Toby needs to go to the battlefield to kill enemies, but you injured him. Do you think everyone is as shameless as you to hide in the fortress for safety? They did not expect Yi Qingtang to injure Toby at all. Originally, Yi Qingtang would have been the injured one. However, the scene that played out was beyond their expectations. Seeing their own brother being injured while the parasite was still quibbling, the kingdom knights felt a strong sense of dissatisfaction. Just as they decided to continue pestering Yi Qingtang over this matter, the assembly horn suddenly rang, and a group of guards hurried over to notify everyone that the king was gathering all the kingdom knights in the hall in preparation for war. Since the king's orders could not be defied, everyone immediately suppressed their anger and hurried to the main hall. Yi Qingtang carried the little white tiger and followed as well. What the fuck? I thought that I'd seen many shameless people already, but it turns out that I'm still so ignorant. How are they shameless? They're simply barefaced and brazen. Their own man couldn't defeat you, and they're even blaming it on you. The little white tiger witnessed the entire scene and was utterly shocked by the behavior of the group of kingdom knights. They are displeased with me, so whatever I do is naturally wrong. Yi Qingtang smiled faintly. She did not put this incident to heart, and she attacked today only to let them know that she was no weak figure. As for whether they liked her or not, who cares? Dozens of kingdom knights within the fortress scurried to the hall where the king assembled them at. The king's brows were tightly locked together as he looked gravely at the sand table before him. Then he looked at the kingdom knights, the elites of their supreme league kingdom, in the hall. The allied forces assembled an army of 500,000 outside our fortress. This time, The glorious Lion Knights are the vanguard. According to the information from our scouts, there are a few black witches concealed in the glorious Lion Knights troop. Apart from this, they also prepared 20 siege engines, and it seems that they are going to launch a fierce attack on our fortress. The king spoke slowly. Silence fell over the hall in a moment. When Yi Qingtang heard the glorious Lion Knights and Black Witches, she faintly guessed why the allied forces that were gathered outside the town suddenly withdrew their troops. She reckoned that they were urgently deployed to the front lines. The allied forces are fully prepared this time. I need you all to buy sufficient time, and I will not deploy many troops. Your goal is only to buy time. Understood? The war from the previous day had just ended, and the fortress' internal forces had yet to completely recover. They must buy enough time and wait for reinforcements to arrive. Is any one of you confident to lead the troops to an enemy retreat? The king scanned the knights at the scene. A few kingdom knights were about to reply, but Joseph suddenly shot them a look before stepping forward. Your Majesty, I have a suitable candidate. Who? The king said. Knight Tang, Joseph said emotionlessly, but he discreetly glanced at Yi Qingtang, who was at the back of the crowd. Chapter 1608, Fight the War, 2. The king was dumbfounded for a moment, but he recalled the new kingdom knight he conferred some time ago. The reason he granted Yi Qingtang the kingdom knight title was not because he acknowledged Yi Qingtang's skills but to boost the army morale. Yet, Joseph suddenly suggested letting Yi Qingtang fight the war and lead the army, and this caused the emperor to frown slightly. Joseph and the others had been dissatisfied with Yi Qingtang for a long time. Adding the fact that she just injured their fellow brother Toby, right now, they could not wait to send Yi Qingtang onto a battlefield with thousands of enemy forces and let her fend for herself. If the king required them to win against the allied forces, they would not joke about such a matter, but if it was only to buy time, there was nothing wrong with sending Yi Qingtang. Wasn't the so-called buying time just using lives to exchange for time? If the outcome was death, of course, the most suitable choice was to sacrifice the most useless parasite. The king hesitated as well. He currently needed some way to endure the first wave of attack, and they would only fight it out with the allied forces after the reinforcements arrived and joined in the war a while later. Your Majesty, we just sparred with Yi Qingtang on the field earlier on, and Tang is very skilled. I believe she came to the fortress and became a kingdom knight to attain glory for the kingdom. Your Majesty, why don't you give Tang a chance and let her display her ambition? In order to screw Yi Qingtang badly, Joseph recommended her strongly without scruples of going against his heart to praise her skills. The other kingdom knights shared the same thoughts and agreed that Yi Qingtang was the most suitable candidate for this war without Joseph having to tell them anything. The little white tiger made a gagging action when it heard this group of people echoing off each other. They're really going all out to screw you this time. Yi Qingtang did not utter a word. After remaining silent for a while, the king suddenly said, Tang, are you confident you can fight this war? Everyone at the scene was very clear that buying time was basically throwing one's life away. In order to retain their strength, it was impossible to deploy too many forces as the king naturally also wished to retain his elite forces. The moment the king spoke, everyone's eyes landed on Yi Qingtang, and Joseph and the others looked at her in a satirical manner. Yi Qingtang walked forward slowly under everyone's watch. Your Majesty, I am willing to fight the war. Smiles filled Joseph's eyes instantly. Very well. The king nodded in satisfaction and immediately deployed 10,000 soldiers to fight along Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang received the order and made the necessary preparations at once. Meanwhile, Joseph and the rest left the hall in smiles as they looked at Yi Qingtang like she was a dead person. She's so bold to accept it. Is she really treating fighting a war as playing house? She has not even been on a battlefield before. What does she know? Over the past few days, she hid behind us and enjoyed herself for a long time. It's time for her to know the cruelty of war. 10,000 against 500,000. I think her entire corpse won't even be found. Who cares how she dies? Just a while longer, and the reinforcements will arrive. By then, we will lead the troops and fight our way out. The kingdom knight chatted and roared with laughter. In their eyes, Yi Qingtang was just an ignorant fool, and leaving the city to fight the war now was just welcoming death. Chapter 1609, Fight the War, 3. All of them were looking forward to the disappearance of this parasite. However, they did not know that what they did was far from throwing Yi Qingtang into a pit of fire. Rather, they were providing her some timely help. During this period of time, Yi Qingtang had been troubling over the absence of a chance to go to war, but these knights joined forces to solve her troubles. Ultimately, Yi Qingtang really wanted to thank their kindness. Yi Qingtang headed to prepare immediately after receiving the orders, while the 10,000 soldiers who were called to fight the war, as though they heard the death knell, had haggard expressions and seemed to be filled with despair. Any soldier who had fought in a war before knew what kind of hopeless situation they were going to face should they fight with such a disparity in numbers. Furthermore, when they saw that their leading kingdom knight was actually a petite teenage girl, their despair intensified, and they almost broke down. The powerful Joseph and other knights were not even fighting this war, yet a little kingdom knight, who God knows popped out from where, was sent instead. This was not sending them to die, what was? The war had not even begun, but the 10,000 soldiers of the Supreme League Kingdom already had a hunch of their deaths and were vaguely aware that they would become sacrifices in the kingdom's war. How old is that whatever Knight Tang? Does she know what a war is? Oh God! We are really going to die this time. The soldiers grieved incessantly. Yet Yi Qingtang, who got onto a horse, was completely unaware, and her eyes shone as though she was looking forward to it greatly. Her behavior caused the soldiers to sigh even more deeply. Indeed, she knew nothing. Otherwise, how could she be this relaxed in the face of such a hopeless situation? 1,000 meters away from the kingdom's fortress, the Allied forces' army of 500,000 was waiting to take action with their accumulated strength. Before the fortress gate was opened, the cheers of the Allied forces outside rang loudly like roaring thunder, sending chills down the spines of the 10,000 soldiers who could not even hold their weapons without trembling. Joseph and the rest had already stood at the city wall of the fortress a long time ago, and they were alarmed by the sight of the 500,000 soldiers. That is the war flag of the glorious Lion Knights. Joseph frowned instinctively when he saw a war flag of a fierce lion in the enemy troops. There's going to be a good show. With the glorious Lion Knights in the war, Tang probably will not even last an hour with those 10,000 soldiers, said another kingdom knight. His Majesty has already made backup plans. If there isn't enough time, another troop will replace them, Joseph said. Evidently, no one treated the troop of 10,000 soldiers seriously, and they all the more did not treat Yi Qingtang seriously either. They felt that Yi Qingtang was a complete good-for-nothing who would not even be capable of buying time. The horn rang suddenly, and the gate of the kingdom's fortress opened. Equipped with armor, Yi Qingtang took the lead and charged out of the fortress on a horse. Meanwhile, the 10,000 soldiers behind her felt their legs wobble as fear engulfed them instantly after seeing the Allied forces' 500,000 men troop. This was it. They were really dead this time. Such few of them were not even enough to be an appetizer for the Allied forces. A 50 times difference in military strength? Apart from God, who else could win such a war? After the 10,000 people exited the fortress, the gate was shut instantly, completely crushing their last hope of escaping. Chapter 1610, Don't Move If You're Scared, 1. Of course, the Allied forces saw the 10,000 soldiers emerging from the kingdom fortress. The Allied forces roared with laughter when they saw their pathetic military strength. 10,000 men? Is the Supreme League Kingdom joking? There's so few of them that there's probably not enough for us to sink our teeth into. Huh? Guess what I saw? Look at that pathetic little girl. Don't tell me she's the general the Supreme League Kingdom sent? The Supreme League Kingdom must really be short of people if they're sending a little fellow like that out to die. A few sharp-eyed knights of the glorious lion saw Yi Qingtang astride her tall horse. They burst out laughing when they saw Yi Qingtang's appearance. How old is she? Is she even 14 years old? She's probably shorter than the spear I'm holding. How can someone like that lead troops to war? The Supreme League Kingdom isn't taking us seriously. Brothers, let's give them a fright. The next moment, the 500,000-strong troop let out a deafening roar. It was as if the entire earth shook. As they roared, they raised their weapons, which glittered blindingly in the sunshine and clustered densely together in a line. It was a hair-raising sight. The 10,000 soldiers from the Supreme League Kingdom were terrified by this sight. They knew they had been sent to die, but they were unable to suppress their terror of death. Yi Qingtang glanced at the troops behind her, who were quivering with fear. Her face was completely devoid of expression. "Tang, this is your first time participating in a battle. Don't embarrass our Supreme League Kingdom." Joseph yelled maliciously from the fortress wall. He could not wait to see Qingtang wet herself with terror. Many of the kingdom knights laughed at Joseph's remarks. But the 10,000 soldiers despaired when they heard that this was Yi Qingtang's first time participating in a battle. "They actually sent someone who has never fought in a battle before. We really were sent here to die. And we have to die with her." The soldiers, who initially still had some fighting spirit, completely lost their morale when they learned that their leader had not even participated in a battle before. This proved that they had been sent here to die. Yi Qingtang ignored the jeers. She turned her head slightly and looked at her despondent soldiers. "Are you scared?" The soldiers that were prepared to die had no respect for Yi Qingtang. Anyway, they were doomed. Who cared if she was a kingdom knight or not? Who wouldn't be scared? It's 10,000 against 50,000. How can we win? We've been sent here to die. "Sir Knight, you're so powerful. Why don't you advance?" They all sneered. Yi Qingtang's lips slowly curved in a smile. "If you're scared, just stay here and don't move." The soldiers were bewildered by Yi Qingtang's words. They wondered if this Knight Tang was crazy. "She will allow us to stay here without moving? Stay here and wait to be captured and killed?" But before the soldiers could react, Yi Qingtang suddenly spurred her horse forward and charged towards the allied forces by herself. The soldiers were all astonished. Is this Knight Tang an idiot? What is she thinking? Is she in a hurry to die? At that moment, all the Supreme League Kingdom soldiers were shocked. When the allied forces saw Yi Qingtang charging at them single-handedly, they were startled, and then burst into uproarious laughter. Chapter 16:11. Don't move if you're scared. 2. What the hell is the Supreme League Kingdom doing? Sending this little devil out to die? Could they be surrendering? The allied forces roared with laughter. They found the scene before them hilarious. The Knights of the Glorious Lions swept a patronizing look at Yi Qingtang. They crossed their arms and said to the troop next to them, "Don't waste time. Kill her." No matter what the Supreme League Kingdom had up its sleeve, they had no time to waste on this girl. Their goal was to capture the Supreme League Kingdom's fortress. With that, 100 allied soldiers rode out, yelling as they charged at Yi Qingtang. They carried long spears and spurred their horses as they galloped forward swiftly. Yi Qingtang's face remained expressionless when she saw the approaching cavalry. She dismounted to meet the allied forces that were galloping towards her. The 10,000 Supreme League Kingdom soldiers who were standing outside the fortress watched as the 100 riders charged at Yi Qingtang. The spear points glittered with cold light. At the next moment, they would pierce Yi Qingtang's frail body. Everyone subconsciously shut their eyes. "Do you want to die?" The allied forces were right in front of Yi Qingtang. The dozens of cavalry lifted their spears in unison and threw them forcefully at Yi Qingtang. Clank, 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 clank. The spear points made contact with Yi Qingtang without harming her. It was as if all the spears had hit tough meteoric iron, and a clear ringing sound could be heard. Yi Qingtang stood there without moving an inch. It was as if the sharp spears pinned to her body were dozens of feathers. What's going on? The allied forces' troops were stunned. They looked at the spears in their hands and thrust them forward with all their might, but they could not penetrate Yi Qingtang's skin at all. It was as if they had hit a rock. At that moment, even the Supreme League Kingdom soldiers, who could not bear to watch what would have been a gruesome death, were completely shocked, not to mention the allied forces. They saw dozens of spears thrust at Yi Qingtang, yet why did Yi Qingtang seem completely unharmed? On the city wall, Joseph and the other kingdom knight were also shaken by this sight. Is Tang wearing armor? Nonsense! What kind of armor can withstand the spears of the Glorious Lion Knights? The spears of the Glorious Lion Knights were all specially forged. It was no exaggeration to say that they could cut through metal like paper. They could even easily cut through a thick steel plate. Could this Yi Qingtang's body be harder than a steel plate? While everyone was in a state of shock, Yi Qingtang calmly glanced at the dozens of spearheads pressing against her. The next moment, she suddenly lifted her hand and swept at the spears. A metallic explosion instantly rang out. The specially forged spears all broke and clattered to the ground as she waved her sleeve. Before the Allied forces could recover their wits, Yi Qingtang had already strode forward. Her slender hands batted at an Allied soldier in the front as if shooing a fly away. Ah! The moment Yi Qingtang's hand swept past, a wail rang out. Yi Qingtang had sent the Allied soldier and his horse flying. The other Allied soldiers had no time to react before Yi Qingtang slowly walked over to them. As her slender arm rose and fell, all the surrounding Allied soldiers and their horses were sent flying. Chapter 1612. Don't move if you're scared. 3. For a moment, the screams of the horses and the wails of the Allied soldiers filled the area. They could see Allied soldiers being tossed into the air while the warhorses they rode were also flung screaming into the air. Yi Qingtang seemed to move slowly, but by the time the Allied forces wanted to act, it was too late. They found themselves behind, flung skywards even before they could prepare themselves to fight. Their faces behind their helmets were filled with surprise and terror. What kind of strength is that? Joseph, who was on the city wall, widened his eyes in disbelief. He had been fighting in the army for so many years, but this was his first time seeing such a simple and barbaric method of fighting. A single slap could send a fully armored glorious lion knight and his steed flying skywards. Even the other kingdom knights had widened their eyes in disbelief, not to mention Joseph. It was as if they were seeing a ghost. One must know that Yi Qingtang was only a petite and frail young girl. If any one of them were put in the same situation, they were certainly not capable of doing the same. The hundreds of Allied cavalry were like bales of hay being flung into the sky. When they fell to the ground, they could not move. Behind them, the Allied soldiers had grim expressions. The commander looked livid, and it was as if he had eaten something ghastly. Who on earth is she? Why does she have this strange power? Oh, I don't know. She looks unfamiliar. I've never seen her before. The Allied forces were completely bewildered. They had never met Yi Qingtang before and thought that she had single-handedly charged forward to meet her death. But now it looked like she was a monster. The Allied forces' commander looked grim. He coldly shouted, "Don't waste time on her. The reinforcements from the Supreme League Kingdom will soon be here. We must attack the fortress before their reinforcements arrive. Archers, shoot. I want to see whether she can survive an attack by my 70,000 archers." A young girl from the Supreme League Kingdom had beaten 100 of their glorious lion knights. He could not stand it. At his order, the 10,000 archers among the Allied forces drew their bows. The next moment, a dense shower of arrows shot straight at the slender figure in the center of the battlefield. Yi Qingtang looked at the Allied soldiers who had collapsed around her in a moaning heap. With a completely calm face, she suddenly raised her head and looked at the horizon. The arrows were flying towards her as thick as rain, but her lips arched slightly in an imperceptible smile. Yi Qingtang slowly took a step forward. Although it looked like a casual step, the moment her heel touched the ground, a whirlwind abruptly arose. This was the first time she was using the Jiang family's movement techniques. Although it could not compare to the immense power generated when Jiang Yu took a step, to the people in this world, it was savage. The moment the whirlwind swept skywards, the 10,000 arrows were swept straight into the whirlwind. The arrows were torn into pieces by the violent wind, and not one could break through the spinning whirlwind. How is this possible? The commander of the Allied forces widened his eyes. 7,000 arrows had been fragmented in a blink of an eye? What kind of joke was this? Where's the Black Witch? Use your witchcraft to kill her. The commander of the Allied forces looked utterly grim. There were 50,000 soldiers ready just to conquer the kingdom fortress. He certainly would not permit this little devil to affect the army's morale. Chapter 1613, Monster 1. After the order was given, a dozen women in black cloaks emerged from among the troops. They were the Black Witches who had been gathered by the various countries. They possessed terrifying dark arts, and their sole role in this battle was to destroy the enemy. For a while, the black witches bowed their heads and chanted an incomprehensible incantation. Large patches of dark clouds slowly gathered in the sky above them. Thunder rumbled loudly as if the earth and sky were about to split. Joseph and the others on the fortress wall saw the thunderclouds slowly gather. Then, they looked at the black witches, who were chanting their spells. They could not help but hang grave expressions on their faces. The Allied forces have really mobilized the black witches. The black witches were an abomination. They obtained powerful dark arts from the devil in exchange for their souls. Once, everyone had tried to destroy them, but now, they were a trump card in the Allied forces' hands. Yi Qingtang, who was in the middle of the whirlwind, cocked her head on one side as she looked at the chanting black witches. What now? Yi Qingtang suddenly raised her head and saw the storm clouds that the black witches were gathering. A cold light flashed across her eyes, and she instantly exuded endless sheets of black flames. In the wild wind, the black flames flickered like demons, and the whirlwind spread them across the void. The black flames in the void instantly gathered to form a huge black phoenix, which spanned 100 meters. The call of the phoenix cut through the air. The chanting black witches raised their eyes in shock at the phoenix's call. When they looked at the phoenix made of black flames covering the sky, all of them looked terrified. The next moment, the black flame phoenix swooped down on the Allied forces' battle lines. As it dived, its huge body seemed to expand. What is that? The commander of the Allied forces widened his eyes in disbelief. He looked at the black flame phoenix diving towards them. It seemed like a nightmare. It was like encountering a demon. An immortal bird? Is that an immortal bird? A black witch was so frightened when she saw the black flame phoenix rushing towards them that she forgot to chant. She wrapped her terrified and quivering body under her thick cloak. The legendary immortal bird burnt with unquenchable flames. Shoot that devilish thing down. The commander of the Allied forces shouted hoarsely. The numerous archers shot simultaneously, but the moment the arrows touched the phoenix, they formed sparks that fell straight onto the troops. Everyone who came into contact with the black flames was instantly engulfed by flames. No matter how they rolled or tried to beat it out, they could not extinguish the flames. The black flames spread swiftly like wildfire through the neatly arrayed rows of the 500,000-strong army. Wails rose and fell throughout the Allied camp. As the black flame phoenix dived downward and passed over the area, the entire place was burnt to ashes. At that moment, Joseph and the others who were standing on the city wall goggled at the sight. They stared open-mouthed as the huge black flame phoenix engulfed everything before them and opposite them. They broke into a cold sweat as they watched the scene unfold before their eyes. What on earth is that? What kind of monster has Yi Qingtang summoned? At that moment, the disdain that Joseph and the others had for Yi Qingtang was reduced to ashes by the ferocious black flame phoenix, leaving only terror in their hearts. Chapter 1614, Monster 2. Fortunately, Tang had not summoned this monster to deal with them. When they thought of how they had jeered and sneered at Yi Qingtang earlier, Joseph and the others felt cold prickles down their spines. It was as if they had challenged a demon. They wished they could slap themselves. Outside the fortress, the 10,000 demoralized soldiers who were prepared to die were also dumbfounded. They stared as the nearby enemy troops were swallowed by the black flames. They felt as though they were living in a dream. They could not stop rubbing their eyes in disbelief. Previously, they felt that His Majesty the King was forcing them to their doom by sending this young girl who had never been on the battlefield. But they had not thought that. She was not a young girl. She was a monster. The 500,000-strong army was not even able to fight and was simply engulfed by the black flames. Endless moans and screams filled their ears. It was spine-chilling. As the black flames spread, the 500,000-strong army, the glorious lions, and the black witches were all completely reduced to ashes. As the last wail disappeared in the black flames, Yi Qingtang crooked her finger. The black flame phoenix in the horizon and the black flames that covered the ground were instantly drawn back into her fingertips by her power, vanishing without a trace. All that was left on the battlefield was a mountain of ashes. Not even bone fragments remained. The violent wind whooshed past, and the ashes were caught up in the wind, scattering across the spacious battlefield. There were no bodies and no battle. There was no scent of blood. Only the stench of ashes was carried to their nostrils by the wind. On the battlefield, only a single proud figure was left standing in the wind. The Allied forces have been defeated. Have we won? We don't need to die anymore? Someone in the 10,000-strong troops suddenly grasped this crucial point. Amidst the shock, his despair gradually dissipated and was replaced by the wild joy of survival. We've won. Night Tang is awesome. Night Tang is awesome. The 10,000 soldiers who had managed to survive immediately cheered. They were not afraid to fight, but they did not want to be the sacrificial lambs in a doomed situation. If they could survive to fight another day, who would be willing to die? Waves of cheers filled the air. The soldiers who had survived rushed towards Yi Qingtang. In their eyes, she was a hero, and they celebrated by tossing her in the air. But after personally witnessing this young girl's power, their hearts were filled with respect and gratitude. When they recalled how they had reproached Yi Qingtang and mistrusted her, they were so ashamed that they wanted to dig a hole in the ground and burrow into it. I deserve to die. I actually doubted Night Tang's abilities. We were really too ignorant. How could His Majesty the King send us to die so easily? His Majesty must have been fully prepared when he appointed Night Tang to lead the troops. His Majesty the King is wise. Night Tang is awesome. What did they have to fear with a powerful kingdom knight like Yi Qingtang before them? So what if the opposing side had 50 times more soldiers? One must consider that in this battle, Yi Qingtang had single-handedly demolished the 500,000 soldiers of the Allied forces. That was a difference of 500,000 times. Joseph and the others who were on the city wall could not help but gulp when they saw the soldiers cheering for Yi Qingtang. Chapter 16:15, Monster 3. They had allowed Yi Qingtang to fight because they wanted to embarrass her and hoped she would die on the battlefield. But now, as they looked at the Allied forces that were reduced to a pile of ashes, all they could think of was how they could quickly think of a way to mend their relationship with Yi Qingtang. Otherwise, they might also become a heap of ashes. It was not just Joseph and the other kingdom knights who were thinking like that. Even the other Supreme League Kingdom soldiers who stood on the city wall to watch the battle were now in inward turmoil. When they saw the 500,000-strong Allied troops, they were prepared to defend the fortress to the death. But no one expected that the Allied forces would be completely exterminated without them even touching the fortress wall. As they looked at Yi Qingtang's figure, the morale of all the soldiers in the Supreme League Kingdom rose. She was so powerful, and she came from their country and was a kingdom knight. An unprecedented sense of security arose in their hearts. At the same time, a door at the other end of the fortress slowly opened. Tens of thousands of Supreme League Kingdom reinforcements had marched through the night to get to the fortress. The commander-in-chief immediately brought them to see the king. "Your Majesty!" The commander of the reinforcements bowed to the king. When the king saw the commander of the reinforcements, his eyes flickered. A hint of a smile appeared in his eyes, which had been looking grim for a long time. "You're just in time. The 500,000 soldiers of the Allied forces are outside the fortress. I have already sent men to buy you some time. You must immediately prepare for battle." The king had felt anxious when he sent Yi Qingtang out to fight and buy time. He was worried that Yi Qingtang would die in battle before she had bought enough time and that the Supreme League Kingdom's fortress would face a devastating blow before the reinforcements arrived. But now, there still was no news from the front that Yi Qingtang had lost the battle. This pleased the king. Although he knew that Yi Qingtang and her group were doomed to die in this battle, as long as they could cause sufficient delay and buy the reinforcements enough time, then they would have accomplished their mission perfectly. Of course, if they survived until the reinforcements joined them, the reinforcements might still be able to save some of them. If possible, the king did not wish to sacrifice his troops like that. However, the circumstances forced his hand. "I will go and make preparations. What is the situation at the front? I need to know so I can better prepare for the battle," the commander of the reinforcements said. The king nodded and summoned a soldier to question him about the fighting at the front. Your Majesty, Knight Tang has achieved a complete victory. She is about to lead her troops back to the fortress. The soldier who arrived with the news looked delighted. What? The king, who was about to reorganize his troops and strike back at the allied forces, was stunned. Knight Tang achieved a complete victory? What do you mean by that? Knight Tang won. She defeated the allied forces. The soldier said. For the first time, the king felt as if he did not understand what he heard. The commander of the reinforcements was also bewildered. When he received the news, he knew that the kingdom fortress was in a precarious situation, which was why he had mustered his troops and hurried here as soon as possible. One must know that with the kingdom fortress' current military strength, they could not possibly hold out against the 500,000 soldiers of the allied forces. But now they had won? Was there some mistake in the dispatches? The king and the commander of the reinforcements were somewhat puzzled. They emerged from the hall and walked towards the fortress entrance. At that moment, Yi Qingtang led her troop of 10,000 soldiers back into the city. Chapter 1616, Kingdom Protector, 1. The king frowned slightly, and his suspicions deepened when he saw that the 10,000 soldiers were perfectly fine. What happened? Did they not leave the fortress to fight the war? The king asked in a deep voice. The soldiers beside him were dumbfounded for a moment and replied immediately. The allied forces were defeated, so they returned. Strange. They clearly won, yet why does His Majesty have such a weird expression? But was there any way for the king to not have a strange expression? They only sent 10,000 people to fight the war and even appointed Yi Qingtang, who had no experience, to lead the troops. No matter what angle this incident was perceived from, it was a hopeless situation given that the allied forces had 500,000 soldiers. But a few soldiers came to report their victory. How could they have won? How could they possibly have won? Tang! The king called immediately when he noticed Yi Qingtang in the crowd. Yi Qingtang took a step forward and bowed to the king. Your Majesty! You won! The king asked. Yes. Yi Qingtang nodded. Where are the allied forces? Yi Qingtang nodded to the soldiers guarding at the city gates, and those soldiers immediately understood and opened the city gates. Seeing that the soldiers actually opened the fortress gates so easily during a war, the commander of the reinforcements had a serious expression and wanted to stop them, but it was already too late. As the fortress gates opened slowly, the boundless plain entered everyone's sight. There was no trace of the allied forces. The allied forces withdrew their troops? The commander of the reinforcements asked in confusion. Yi Qingtang shook her head. They're right here. What? The commander was at a loss, and a look of dissatisfaction emerged in his eyes as he sized up the girl before him. Where did this brat come from to cause trouble here? Yi Qingtang smiled without saying anything. Joseph and the other kingdom knights rushed down from the city wall and to the king, whom they kneeled to pay respects. Your Majesty Ting is saying the truth. The allied forces are right here. The king frowned slightly. There was not a single person outside the fortress. Where were the allied forces? Your Majesty, the 500,000 soldiers of the allied forces are burned into ashes and are blown everywhere. Joseph mustered his courage to report as he secretly took a look at Yi Qingtang when he spoke. He prayed that Tang could forgive their past ignorance. As calm as the king was, he could not help but widen his eyes at this moment. Then Joseph and the rest vividly reported to the king the entire process about how Yi Qingtang killed 500,000 soldiers of the allied forces in a second by herself. The king's expression changed drastically, and he looked at Yi Qingtang in astonishment in great contrast to his past half-hearted attitude. The commander of the reinforcements felt his eyes almost popping out. A single person annihilated 500,000 soldiers? Including the glorious Lion Knight's trump card and numerous black witches? What kind of joke is this? The king and the others did not dare to believe it easily, but they had incredibly amusing expressions when they saw the ashes of the allied forces, which the soldiers brought back. 500,000 soldiers were really burned into a pile of ashes by Tang herself. Currently, the commander of the reinforcements no longer looked down on Yi Qingtang. He swallowed his saliva secretly as he looked at the petite girl and mumbled, Your Majesty! Could it be that she is the kingdom protector we have been waiting for years? Chapter 16-17, Kingdom Protector, 2. The commander of the reinforcements spoke very softly so that only he and the king could hear. The king's expression changed. But before the king could take his next move, there was an uproar within the fortress. A group of prisoners of war from the Allied forces suddenly escaped from the fortress prison and were in a battle with the Supreme League Kingdom soldiers in the fortress. The king's expression darkened immediately, and he ordered people to suppress them. There were only about 100 prisoners of war, and they were subdued very quickly and were brought to the king. Under intense interrogation, the prisoners of war who escaped finally revealed the truth. The Allied forces planted spies in the kingdom's fortress and prepared to release all of them from the fortress prison when the 500,000 soldiers attacked, so as to coordinate a pincer attack and annihilate the entire Supreme League kingdom. These prisoners of war kneeling before the king were the first group of people who were released. Spies. The king's expression darkened to the extreme. Without any warning, he unsheathed the sword hung on the waist of the commander of reinforcements and chopped off the head of a prisoner. Send my orders down. Kill all the prisoners of war in the fortress. There was no emotion in the king's voice, but what he said sent chills down everyone's spine. After such a long war, there were thousands of prisoners of war from the Allied forces, and they were all locked in the kingdom's fortress. It was a rule of this mainland to not kill any prisoners of war during a war. Your Majesty, less than 1% of those prisoners of war know about this information. Many of them are innocent, a high-ranking military officer said as he could not bear to see such a sight. However, before he could finish his sentence, the sword in the king's hand slashed the officer's neck. Blood spouted everywhere like a fountain, and the military officers who still wanted to persuade the king immediately kept their mouths shut. Their king was never a compassionate ruler. He was a true cold-blooded emperor who resorted to any means in order to achieve his goal, and all lives were insignificant to him. Just like his ambition to annex the entire mainland, no one dared to question the king's orders anymore. Large groups of soldiers surged into the prison, and in no time, piercing shrieks echoed in the air. The smell of blood emanated from the prison, and it was so strong that it was nauseating. The cries of thousands of prisoners of war did not result in any sympathy nor remorse on the king's face. He simply tossed the sword to the commander of the reinforcements and turned to look at Yi Qingtang. Tang, follow me to the hall. Yi Qingtang was emotionless as she looked at the king who killed thousands of people with just an order. Then, she moved her legs and headed to the main hall with the commander of the reinforcements. As the king looked at Yi Qingtang in the hall, a smile suddenly appeared on his gloomy face. Kingdom Protector, I've been waiting for you for a long time. The king did not care about the deaths of thousands of people and was more concerned about the Kingdom Protector. Among the various kingdoms, a powerful protector would always appear at a certain timing. It was said that those protectors were guided by the gods to protect the balance among the kingdoms. They possessed extraordinary abilities and were collectively called the Kingdom Protector. Chapter 16-18, Kingdom Protector, 3. Kingdom Protectors kept watch in many nations, but the Supreme League Kingdom's Kingdom Protector never appeared. This brought the king great anxiety, but fortunately, there had long been a rule that Kingdom Protectors were not allowed to participate in wars between nations. It was exactly for this reason that the Supreme League Kingdom could last this long against the Allied forces. Otherwise, they simply had no hope of winning if the Kingdom Protectors of other kingdoms joined the war. However, with the reminder from the commander, the king realized that their Kingdom Protector may very well have appeared. And she was standing right before them at this very instant. The king recalled Joseph's recount of how Yi Qingtang fought the Allied forces and increasingly felt that Yi Qingtang was the protector of the Supreme League Kingdom. There's no doubt. In the entire mainland, who else apart from a Kingdom Protector could eliminate 500,000 soldiers by herself? And more importantly, Kingdom Protectors will never abandon their kingdom. Your Majesty, I've made you wait for a long time. Yi Qingtang naturally went along with the king's discourse. Yi Qingtang did not know what exactly a Kingdom Protector was, but she clearly sensed the king's change in attitude. The smiling king before her was completely different from the cold-blooded ruler who ordered the deaths of thousands of people just a while ago. Nevertheless, while she did not know what a kingdom protector was, it seemed to be someone who protected this nation from its name, and this coincided with the mission the god of nature gave her. The king nodded in satisfaction. The commander of the reinforcements was astonished and delighted. The Supreme League Kingdom finally had their own kingdom protector. However, the commander of the reinforcements suddenly thought of something, and he looked at the king as though he wanted to say something. At the thought of the military officer who was beheaded for persuading the king, the commander eventually did not voice his worries. It was a good thing that Yi Qingtang was the protector of the Supreme League Kingdom. However, according to the mainland's convention, kingdom protectors were not allowed to participate in wars unless the enemy country invaded the kingdom's capital. However, Yi Qingtang killed 500,000 men of the allied forces earlier on. If this news of this incident spread, yet another disaster would probably hit this mainland. The commander's worries were not unfounded. News of the annihilation of the allied forces' 500,000 soldiers spread across the mainland very quickly. 500,000 elite forces were wiped out in less than half a day, and not a single corpse was left. This was definitely not achievable by normal military troops. Apart from the kingdom protector, who else could possess such formidable powers? Not long after Yi Qingtang annihilated 500,000 soldiers, the king of the Manzi Kingdom personally visited the Supreme League Kingdom's fortress. The Manzi Kingdom possessed the greatest military strength on this mainland. In this war that almost enveloped the entire mainland, the Manzi Kingdom maintained a neutral position from the start and never took part in it. The Supreme League Kingdom had the strongest military, but in terms of military strength, it was far behind that of the Manzi Kingdom. The two kingdoms had always stayed in their own lane, and now that the Manzi King personally came to the Supreme League Kingdom's fortress, it seemed that the matter was truly severe. Chapter 1619, Kingdom Protector, 4. The Supreme League King was emotionless as he watched the magnificently dressed Manzi King walk in. On the other hand, the Manzi King was full of smiles. "Old friend, I heard that the Supreme League Kingdom's protector appeared?" The Manzi King spoke to the point after exchanging a few polite remarks. Upon hearing that, the Supreme League King frowned discreetly, and his eyes swept past Yi Qingtang. The Manzi King sharply sensed the Supreme League King's line of sight and immediately looked at the petite girl in the main hall. "This is the Supreme League Kingdom's protector, right? She's actually so young. But it's truly impressive that she could completely wipe out 500,000 soldiers from the allied forces at such an age." The Manzi King did not conceal his praises for Yi Qingtang and seemed to be very optimistic about her. The Supreme League King's expression was not too pleasant. "What are you here for today?" The Manzi Kingdom had massive military strength, and even the past Supreme League King did not dare to offend him easily. "Old friend, you've been fighting the allied forces for so long, and you should be short in military strength by now. I am here to gift you troops today." The Manzi King smiled while speaking. "What do you mean?" The Manzi King smiled as he blatantly glanced at Yi Qingtang. "Old friend, it is a cause for celebration that you found the protector. However, it is against the mainland's convention for a kingdom protector to participate in the kingdom's warfare. Truthfully speaking, all the kingdoms are already aware that you sent a protector into the war. Those who were originally in a neutral position are very dissatisfied with you over it and are prepared to join the allied forces to punish you." The Manzi King paused for a moment before continuing. "I'm here today to make a deal with you. As long as you hand your kingdom protector to the Manzi Kingdom, I will give you troops with thousands of soldiers. It should be sufficient for you to deal with the subsequent battles. Kingdom protectors are forbidden from participating in warfares from the start. Even if you keep her, there is not much use for your coming battles. Why don't you hand her over to the Manzi Kingdom instead? We're just helping each other to get what we want. You get the troops, and I get the kingdom protector. Then, your Supreme League Kingdom no longer has a kingdom protector, and other kingdoms do not have proof to reprimand you for violating the convention. Isn't this a win-win?" The Manzi Kingdom had massive military strength, but like the past Supreme League Kingdom, there was a problem that plagued all kings. They did not have a kingdom protector. This was a sore point for the Manzi King. Thus, he hurriedly rushed over after knowing that a kingdom protector appeared in the Supreme League Kingdom and even went into the battlefield. A sinister look flashed across the Supreme League King's eyes. You want to have our kingdom protector? That's right. If you feel that 1 million soldiers are not enough, I can give you 2 million. The Monza King simply dropped a shocking number. 2 million? You're really generous. The Supreme League Kingdom laughed. The Monza King's eyes glistened. Since you think that it's appropriate, it'll be fixed then. From now on, you are the Monza Kingdom's protector. You're wrong, said the Supreme League King before lifting his chin slightly and sneering. Tang will always be the Supreme League Kingdom's protector. I'm not interested in your troop of 2 million soldiers. You can leave. Chapter 1620, Mission Countdown, 1. The Monza King did not expect his attractive conditions to be rejected. You don't agree? Are you aware that you will really violate the mainland convention if you continue keeping her here? I'm doing this for the good of both our kingdoms. Please leave immediately. The Supreme League King ordered him to leave. The Monza King's face darkened completely. He shot the Supreme League King a furious look and scoffed before leaving the hall with his men. Once the Monza King left, the Supreme League King's expression turned for the better, and he looked toward Yi Qingtang. The mainland convention is always a cover for those cowards. How ridiculous is it to have a powerful protector and not send him or her to war because of a vague convention? Yi Qingtang smiled gently. Over the past few days, the king frequently summoned her to discuss the situation of the current war, and Yi Qingtang was very clear about the king's ambition of dominating the entire mainland. Restricting the Supreme League King with a mainland convention? What a joke! Would a person who dares to become enemies with the entire mainland be scared of such a lame thing? The king looked toward the sky outside the hall and placed his hands behind his back. Since a long time ago, I have already thought that I definitely would not care about the mainland convention if I have a kingdom protector. It's their idiocy and cowardice to not dare to let their kingdom protector participate in warfare. Who will never be as incapable as them. Afterward, the king's eyes focused back on Yi Qingtang. Tang, are you willing to forget about the mainland convention and make the Supreme League Kingdom the hegemon of this mainland with me? The king seemed to be inquiring, yet also testing Yi Qingtang. I am willing to serve you, your majesty. Yi Qingtang bowed slowly. The Supreme League King was not a hero, but he was a formidable character in troubled times. And her mission was to assist this formidable character to become the ruler of this mainland. The king laughed. He was extremely satisfied with Yi Qingtang's reply, and his trust in her increased a lot. Tang, are you confident you can deal with other protectors? Once Yi Qingtang participated in a war, the mainland convention on the protector restriction would be violated. The Supreme League King was sure that other kingdoms would definitely not sit and wait for death. Other kingdom protectors would participate in the upcoming battles. Yi Qingtang said, I will definitely present your majesty with the ruler position. The king was in a slight daze and subsequently laughed out. He felt assured after hearing Yi Qingtang's declaration. The Supreme League King's prediction was not unfounded. The kingdoms were not foolish. The Supreme League Kingdom violated the mainland convention by sending a kingdom protector to participate in warfare. This was a clear challenge to the entire mainland. The Monza Kingdom, which was previously embarrassed by the Supreme League Kingdom, joined the Allied forces camp with its massive military force. The remaining few neutral kingdoms also joined in to punish the Supreme League Kingdom. Since the Supreme League Kingdom was the first to go against the mainland convention, the other kingdoms in the Allied forces did not hold back anymore and successively deployed their kingdom protectors to the front lines. They wanted to see how a kingdom protector of the Supreme League Kingdom could fight against so many kingdom protectors of theirs. The moment the kingdom protectors participated in the war, this conflict that spanned across the entire mainland had already developed in an uncontrollable direction. Chapter 1621, Mission Countdown, 2. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and sand swept in along with the wind. The armies were like a strong tide that slowly advanced into the fortress of the Supreme League Kingdom. The galloping of horses and hurried footsteps caused tremors in the ground. At the sight of the escalating frenzy at the horizon, The defending guards at the top of the fortress wall were shocked. The bugle call rang suddenly, and a restless stir broke out inside the fortress. The Supreme League Kingdom soldiers climbed to the city walls successively and were alarmed when they saw the boundless majestic troops. Those are the Allied forces. Joseph and the other kingdom knights had an unpleasant look when they saw the massive troops before them. What's happening? Have the Allied forces launched a total offensive? In the previous battle, the Allied forces mobilized 500,000 soldiers, which was already extremely frightening, but that did not hold a candle to the present situation. How many soldiers are there? 1 million? 2 million? Or, the king and Yi Qingtang scaled the city walls as well, and the king narrowed his eyes as he looked at the densely packed Allied forces swarming in like a tide. Over 60 million or so. Yi Qingtang gave an estimate after a glance. 60 million? The kingdom knight's eyes popped wide open in disbelief when they heard this unbelievable figure. Over 60 million. Were the Allied forces insane? This was a life-and-death struggle. The Supreme League Kingdom only had about 7 million soldiers in the prime of its military strength, and after all the battles it went through, it only had less than 3 million soldiers left. Yet now, they were about to be attacked by almost all the kingdoms on this entire mainland. Over 60 million people? Even if each person contributed a small effort, they had enough soldiers to destroy the entire fortress. A serious look emerged on the king's face, and a grim air hung in the entire fortress as anxiety overwhelmed them. Only Yi Qingtang had a calm and indifferent look. 60 million people. Is this all the armies of the other kingdoms? It should be the majority of their forces, said the king. Apart from the garrison troops, all the kingdoms probably dispatched many soldiers, and it seemed that they intended to have a decisive battle. Yi Qingtang nodded thoughtfully. She should be very close to completing her mission. Supreme League Kingdom, you openly violated the mainland convention and dispatched a kingdom protector to enter the battlefield without authorization. Today, you will pay a tragic price for your actions. Get your kingdom protector out here, or else we will destroy your entire fortress immediately. An armored male suddenly moved to the front of the troops and shouted loudly on his suave horse. He was clearly several hundred meters away from the fortress, but his voice was sonorous like thunder that rumbled in their ears. That is the Glory Kingdom's protector. The Supreme League King recognized that male at once and narrowed his eyes. Previously, the 500,000 soldiers of the Allied forces that Yi Qingtang annihilated were dispatched by the Glory Kingdom. As a Supreme League Kingdom protector, Yi Qingtang participated in the battle and wiped out 500,000 soldiers of the Glory Kingdom. She violated the mainland convention first, and it was reasonable for the Glory Kingdom protector to join this war now. The pressure of 60 million soldiers was not a joking matter. The other party was forcing Yi Qingtang to come out to face them, otherwise, the troops would launch an attack immediately. Chapter 1622, Mission Countdown, 3. Tang, the kingdom protector of the glorious kingdom, is very formidable. It said that he can control the land and cause landslides and crack the ground with his bare hands. Are you confident that you can beat him? The Supreme League King did anticipate the enemies to send their kingdom protectors, but the one from the glorious kingdom was considered rather powerful out of all the kingdom protectors. Yi Qingtang smiled briefly and gave the Supreme League King a comforting look. Don't worry, Your Majesty. Afterward, Yi Qingtang leaped up and flew toward the battleground from the tall fortress. At this instant, everyone in the Supreme League Kingdom was overwhelmed with anxiety. Meanwhile, the Allied forces were calm. In reality, the glorious kingdom protector was not the only kingdom protector who was dispatched. However, he had a famous teacher and could fight in the war while the other protectors were constrained by the mainland convention and could not strike directly. Nevertheless, in their opinion, the protector of the Supreme League Kingdom seemed very young and weak, so the glorious kingdom protector himself seemed to be enough to deal with her. The Glory Kingdom protector raised a brow in contempt as he looked at the girl who flew toward him. Are you the Supreme League Kingdom protector? That's right, replied Yi Qingtang. Ha, prick. You massacred 500,000 soldiers of the glorious kingdom. I will settle this score with you today. The glorious kingdom protector jumped down from his horse immediately and cracked his knuckles. Yi Qingtang glanced at him plainly, making it seem as if she did not detect the intense murderous intent emitted by him. I will use my hands to crush every single bone on your body, bury you underground, and make you die a miserable death. The glorious kingdom protector had a look of malice. Without any warning, he lunged forward and swung his fists, which could crush a mountain, heavily toward Yi Qingtang. With a loud bang, the glorious kingdom protector swung his fist toward Yi Qingtang's shoulder. However, rather than piercing through Yi Qingtang's flesh, his fist seemed to have hit an extremely sturdy block of diamond. Full of crap. After uttering a plain sentence, Yi Qingtang used her hand as a knife and struck her opponent's nape in a flash. In an instant, the glorious kingdom protector felt as if his nape was struck by lightning as an excruciating burst of pain spread throughout his whole body, causing him to turn pale from the pain. His tall figure collapsed to the ground in a stiff manner as he twitched in pain. Crush my bones. Yi Qingtang looked at the protector on the ground, and her lips gradually formed into a smile. She lifted her leg slowly before stepping on the protector's head and driving it right into the ground. In an instant, blood spouted everywhere, and the protector's head was crushed by Yi Qingtang's step. Control the land? Yi Qingtang definitely did not feel that this person had such an ability. Perhaps he did, but, in front of Yi Qingtang, his skills were so weak that he did not even have the chance to display his unique abilities. Currently, Yi Qingtang was only thinking of completing the mission as soon as possible and exchanging treasures using her points. Obviously, she did not have the time and mood to continue being entangled in this world. Retracting her blood-stained leg, Yi Qingtang looked up at the Allied forces camp. Chapter 1623, Mission Countdown 4. At this instant, both camps on the battlefield were dumbfounded by the scene before them. What is going on? The glorious kingdom protector died just like that? How can this be? Even if the Allied forces took into account that Yi Qingtang was not as weak as she appeared, she should not be strong to the extent that she could kill a kingdom protector with a strike and a kick, right? The Supreme League King's initial worries completely vanished upon witnessing the scene, and he looked at Yi Qingtang with deep admiration. In the Allied forces, the Manzi King witnessed Yi Qingtang's formidable powers and felt his lips twitch. No wonder the Supreme League King was unwilling to exchange Yi Qingtang regardless of the conditions. We can't go on like this. The Supreme League Kingdom initiated the war and violated the Mainland Convention. If we still insist on upholding the Mainland Convention and forbid the Kingdom Protectors from joining the war, who will stop the Supreme League Kingdom's ambitions? The Manzi King suddenly spoke and persuaded the other kings in the Allied forces. Only Kingdom Protectors could contend with a Kingdom Protector. Although they brought over 60 million soldiers, they would still suffer great losses even if they managed to conquer the Supreme League Kingdom fortress should they not eliminate Yi Qingtang first. The various kings who initially took into account the Mainland Convention were completely wavering after witnessing how Yi Qingtang killed the glorious Kingdom Protector in a second. Then, all of them made the decision to dispatch all the Kingdom Protectors in the troops. In no time, dozens of Kingdom Protectors appeared on the battlefield uniformly. How shameless are the Allied forces? They actually sent so many Kingdom Protectors? What do they want? Bullying us by outnumbering us. The Supreme League Kingdom Knights were infuriated. No matter how powerful Yi Qingtang was, she was no opponent for the unified attack of this many Kingdom Protectors. Emotions of anxiety and worry instantly rose again in everyone. Your Majesty, I am willing to fight the war with Lord Protector. Joseph, who was previously annoyed with Yi Qingtang, had already become the biggest worshipper of Yi Qingtang now. Your Majesty, let us fight the war. The king's brows were locked tightly, and he had a serious look on his face. Seeing that the king did not reply, Joseph and the rest ran down by themselves and opened the fortress gates, wanting to fight the enemy with their powerful Lord Protector. However, just as the door opened, Yi Qingtang heard a sound and stirred up a strong blast of wind with her palm, closing the fortress gates tightly. Stay in there obediently, Yi Qingtang said. She was going to complete her mission very soon. Why were they still rushing out to give her more trouble? Yi Qingtang did not speak much, But Joseph and the rest were unaware of her feelings. They were under the misunderstanding that she did not allow them to join the battle because she sensed danger, and this assumption made them moved and anxious instantly. The numerous kingdom protectors were from different kingdoms and were extremely powerful. At this instant, they encircled Yi Qingtang and were ready to get rid of this girl who violated the mainland convention. Yi Qingtang glanced at all the kingdom protectors individually. All of you can come on together. She did not wish to waste time. Chapter 1624, Mission Countdown, 5. Yi Qingtang's words left all kingdom protectors stunned. The allied forces thought that she was insane while the Supreme League Kingdom people were dumbfounded. Does Tang know what she is saying? Those kingdom protectors exchanged a look, and they caught sarcasm and ridicule in each other's eyes. Never had they seen such a shameless person before. Did she think she was a god just because she won against a kingdom protector? However, they would not go easy on Yi Qingtang right now. As long as Yi Qingtang died, the Supreme League Kingdom definitely would be unable to defend against the Allied forces' troops, and they would attain the final victory. Almost in an instant, the kingdom protectors surrounding Yi Qingtang began to take action. Light glowed around them, and a powerful aura swept across the entire place like a strong torrent. Everyone in the fortress could sense the immense power and was extremely worried for Yi Qingtang, who faced her opponents alone. Too careless. How can Tang be so arrogant? No matter how powerful she is, it's impossible for her to be the opponent of so many kingdom protectors combined. The soldiers of the allied forces were all smiling. They were waiting. They were waiting for the moment when Yi Qingtang died. Yi Qingtang showed no fear as she looked at the kingdom protectors around her displaying their remarkable powers. She glanced at them from the corner of her eyes slowly and sighed softly. If this is the extent of these kingdom protectors, that's really... In a moment, the kingdom protectors attacked Yi Qingtang at the same time, and a blinding light enveloped the land instantly. An explosive sound pierced everyone's ears. Due to the bright light, no one could see where Yi Qingtang was, and they could only strive to open their eyes and attempt to look for a trace of her shadow. Just as everyone thought that Yi Qingtang would definitely die, a slender figure suddenly leaped out from the bright light. Those kingdom protectors thought that Yi Qingtang had already died from the joint attack when they suddenly felt a powerful aura above their heads. They looked up instinctively, only to see Yi Qingtang floating in the sky and towering over them emotionlessly. In the next second, Yi Qingtang moved her leg in the air slightly. It was a slow and elegant move, but the moment her leg landed, black flames suddenly appeared from beneath her foot. The black flames spread in the surroundings wildly and flooded down to the ground like huge splattering waves. In no time, those aggressive kingdom protectors were completely engulfed by the endless black flames. The light glowing on their bodies gradually vanished from the black flames. Miserable shrieks escaped their mouths continuously as their figures were swallowed by the black flames bit by bit before everyone's eyes. As if they had fallen into a vast ocean with no way of breaking free, they had no room to resist. The scene left everyone utterly dumbfounded. They felt their hair stand as they watched numerous kingdom protectors, the symbol of the greatest power of a kingdom, being engulfed by the black flames and heard their plaintive cries. Chapter 1625, Mission Countdown, 6. The black flames burned like the fires of hell, incinerating everyone they came into contact with. The desolate wails were broken up by the wind and gradually disappeared in the flames. The complacent allied troops were now ashen. These dozen kingdom protectors were gathered from various kingdoms. They were incredibly powerful. But now, these kingdom protectors had been reduced to ashes before their eyes. By the time Yi Qingtang lifted her hand to absorb the black flames, there were only a dozen piles of smoking ash at her feet. The allied forces were stupefied. The group from the Supreme League Kingdom who had witnessed the whole process from the top of the fortress was also astounded. They would never have believed it if they had not seen it for themselves. Who on earth could kill a dozen kingdom protectors in a few seconds? Only then did the Supreme League King realize that Yi Qingtang's earlier words were no exaggeration. She said that she would help him become the hegemon of this mainland. At that moment, the king also fully realized that she was the only person in the world who had such terrifying powers. Cheers rang out in the Supreme League Kingdom's fortress. Their kingdom protector was the most powerful one. She was more intrepid than the kingdom protectors in any of the other kingdoms. With such a powerful kingdom protector, what did their Supreme League Kingdom have to fear? There was rejoicing throughout the Supreme League Kingdom. Meanwhile, the Allied forces were greatly alarmed. This was a completely unexpected outcome. They had been supremely self-confident when they set out, but now, they were filled with despair. What kind of demon was the Supreme League Kingdom protector? They were all kingdom protectors, yet why was she so terrifyingly powerful? But before the Allied forces could recover from their fright, the cheering Supreme League Kingdom soldiers impatiently opened the fortress gate and swarmed out. At that moment, all of them were burning with the desire to fight. Even if they had to face millions of enemies, they felt no fear. They had the most powerful kingdom protector on this mainland. She could single-handedly exterminate 100,000 men. She could kill a dozen kingdom protectors. She was Yi Qingtang. Millions of Supreme League Kingdom soldiers swarmed out of the fortress. They deliberately stood behind Yi Qingtang as if she was the true, indomitable force behind the throne. Yi Qingtang had utterly terrified the Allied forces. As the Allied forces faced this army that was several times smaller than theirs, terror rose in their bones. So what if they had fewer soldiers? As long as the Supreme League Kingdom had Yi Qingtang, it was enough to terrorize them. The leaders of the Allied forces almost simultaneously ordered the retreat to be sounded. What kind of joke was this? Even the kingdom protectors were no match for this monster. They would only die at her hands. The 60 million strong army retreated without fighting. They fled in confusion like dogs that had lost their master. This day completely altered the situation on the entire mainland. In a single day, the Allied forces had lost a dozen kingdom protectors. This terrified them more than losing 10 million troops. Yi Qingtang, who had won a great victory, seized the opportunity to pursue them. Step by step, she pushed the Supreme League Kingdom to the highest position within the mainland. Chapter 1626, Mission Countdown, 7. The Supreme League Kingdom had fewer soldiers, but they had Yi Qingtang and could defeat the army's most powerful protectors. Under Yi Qingtang's leadership, the Supreme League Kingdom army easily swept aside all resistance and destroyed one Allied army camp after another. Wherever they went, the Allied forces would flee in disarray. Their only wish was that they were born with a few more legs. As the Allied troops were routed, the Supreme League Kingdom's power grew. Utterly terrified, the countries could not consolidate their strength. All of them sought to preserve themselves, so the alliance died in all but name. The Supreme League King advanced towards his goal of uniting this mainland. As they won again and again, the king's cruel and domineering side became increasingly apparent. Each time they captured a kingdom's capital, the king would order everyone in the kingdom to be killed. It was a massacre. Not a single soul was left alive, be it nobles or commoners. Yi Qingtang was cultivating in her room when there was a sudden knocking on her door. She arose to open the door and saw Joseph standing outside. Joseph and the others had idolized Yi Qingtang ever since she beat the dozen kingdom protectors. The kingdom knights, who had despised Yi Qingtang, now became her fans. At that moment, Joseph's expression was extremely ugly. He was also dead white. Plead His Majesty. Joseph suddenly kneeled before Yi Qingtang. His voice shook. What's going on? Yi Qingtang sensed that something was amiss with Joseph. Joseph raised his head. His bloodshot eyes were filled with helplessness and despair. His Majesty has ordered us to slaughter everyone in the Hughes Kingdom, even the commoners. When General Ronald tried to dissuade His Majesty had them beheaded. Lord Protector, I know that the Hughes Kingdom betrayed our Supreme League Kingdom, but the commoners are innocent. The Hughes Kingdom was originally allied with the Supreme League Kingdom, but when the Supreme League Kingdom began to struggle, the Hughes Kingdom chose to throw their lot in with the alliance. They even sold their kingdom protector to the Manza King for 2 million soldiers. Because of that, the Supreme League King decided to carry out this shocking act of tyranny when he conquered the Hughes Kingdom. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. She was only involved in the fighting and seldom interfered with the affairs of the Supreme League Kingdom. However, she did not expect the Supreme League King to give such a sadistic order. It was the King of Hues who had betrayed the Supreme League Kingdom. What did it have to do with the commoners who were just getting on with their lives? Yi Qingtang did not speak, but she brushed past Joseph and hurried to the Great Hall. When Joseph saw Yi Qingtang heading for the Great Hall, a ray of hope rose in his heart, and he hurriedly followed. At that moment, the Great Hall was filled with the strong scent of blood. The Supreme League King had just cut off the heads of General Ronald and the others who had tried to stop the massacre. The floor of the Great Hall was sticky with blood. Everyone was ashen, and their hands shook as they tried to wipe the blood stains away. The king on his throne showed no sign of pity. The Great Hall was flanked by 2 ministers, who were pale and unnerved. They did not dare to say a word. Amidst this dead silence, Yi Qingtang strode through the entrance. Chapter 1627, Mission Countdown 8. The moment the grim-looking king saw Yi Qingtang, a smile appeared on his face. He naturally stood up and looked at the person who had made the greatest contribution to their Supreme League Kingdom. Tang, these few days have been hard on you. When we've eliminated the Hues Kingdom, we need to press on and conquer the next few kingdoms as soon as possible, the king said with a smile. The subsequent route of attack was already displayed on the sand table in front of him. As long as Yi Qingtang was around, the Supreme League Kingdom would never be defeated. At that moment, the king did not look like the same cruel person who had just ordered an entire kingdom to be slaughtered. Your Majesty, you ordered the citizens of Hue's kingdom to be slaughtered? Yi Qingtang spoke bluntly as she looked at the king, who was prepared to realize his ambitions. The king was taken aback. From the corner of his eye, he glanced at Joseph, who had entered with Yi Qingtang, and a malicious look flashed across his face. Tang, the Hue's kingdom betrayed us. Have you heard of the saying, if you are not one of us, your heart is not with us? Yi Qingtang did not intend to become overly involved in the matters of this world, but she definitely would not condone the massacre of an entire kingdom. Death and injury were inevitable in battle, but she could not accept ordinary citizens being dragged into it. Yi Qingtang said, since your Majesty's goal is to unite the entire mainland, everyone in this mainland will become your subject. How can you say they are not one of you? Yi Qingtang's words struck the king. If your Majesty wishes to unite the entire kingdom, then he must treat all the citizens in this mainland as his own subjects. Soon, you will be king over them all. Yi Qingtang did not urge the Supreme League King to rule compassionately. He had never been a benevolent ruler. The king's expression flickered. Yi Qingtang's words struck a nerve within him. Since they are your Majesty's subjects, why do you need to slaughter them? Yi Qingtang asked. The king was silent for a moment. The corner of his mouth twitched with amusement when he finally grasped what Yi Qingtang meant. Tang, you're right. But if they harbor any traitorous thoughts, you will soon be the only monarch in this mainland. Anyone who submits to you will have a life of ease. Whoever opposes you will die. If they can be assured of an easy life, why would they risk their lives? No commoner hopes for war. Yi Qingtang said with a smile. The fight for power was always a game played by the leaders. To the commoners, it made no difference who governed them. As long as the leader allowed them to have a life of ease, they would love him. The king sank into deep thought. He had ruled with an iron fist. Even if he conquered a country, he would eliminate all the subjects in the kingdom at the first opportunity, both to prevent the people from rebelling and to ensure his absolute sovereignty. But Yi Qingtang's words had shaken the king's thinking. If someone else had said it, he would have scoffed at the idea. But when Yi Qingtang said it, it was a completely different matter. Tang, perhaps you are right. I can try it. The king nodded. He was happy to listen to Yi Qingtang's opinions. Everyone breathed more freely when they saw that the king had relented. Right now, the king probably listened only to the Lord Protector. Chapter 1628, Mission Countdown 9. The king did, in fact, take Yi Qingtang's advice and rescinded his chilling order to slaughter everyone. Now, all the kingdoms on this mainland were terrified of Yi Qingtang. The moment they saw Yi Qingtang on the battlefield, they fled as swiftly as possible. Some of them simply raised the white flag in surrender. Yi Qingtang also took the opportunity to suggest that to avoid further warfare, the king should accept any kingdom that voluntarily surrendered and submitted to the Supreme League Kingdom. All they had to do was disarm and remove their royal family. Then, the Supreme League Kingdom could take over straight away without needing to fight any further. The king fundamentally agreed to Yi Qingtang's suggestions. When this was implemented, many kingdoms wanted to surrender. However, the Supreme League King's cruelty made them uneasy and caused them to hesitate. Fortunately, once the first country tried it and was not slaughtered by the Supreme League Kingdom, all the other countries saw a ray of hope. More and more countries voluntarily chose to yield. They would rather submit to the Supreme League Kingdom than face a monster like Yi Qingtang on the battlefield. Yi Qingtang's suggestions swiftly ended the war that would otherwise have lasted many years. The Supreme League Kingdom was the greatest beneficiary and controlled the entire mainland. Because the war ended early, the people could finally stop worrying about the cruelties of war, and many soldiers were saved from a tragic death on the battlefield. The Supreme League King's disposition seemed to change as well. He was much more benign towards the countries that surrendered. The other countries also heard that it was the Supreme League Kingdom's powerful protector who had pacified this predatory monarch. Many of them were grateful to Yi Qingtang. The Supreme League Kingdom's unification plan caused the royal family of every kingdom to lose their position and privileges. This reduced the pressure among the royal families on this mainland. Unification had its benefits. The bishop, who had mistaken Yi Qingtang for a white magician and who was seeking an opportunity to thrive among the kingdoms, was stunned when he finally saw the legendary, most powerful kingdom protector on the day that the kingdoms were united. Isn't that the white magician who had vanished? How did she become the kingdom protector? When the Supreme League Kingdom accomplished the feat of unification, Yi Qingtang finally finished her mission in this world. At the banquet to celebrate the unification, Yi Qingtang left the world with the god of nature. She did not know that shortly after she left, the source of magic on this mainland, which had been sealed for over 1,000 years, re-emerged. Because the entire mainland was unified and the Supreme League King had taken Yi Qingtang's advice to show clemency, he could gather all the powers in the mainland to study the source of magic. This allowed this mainland, which had waned for a long time, to once again welcome a new era. And the kingdom protector who had precipitated the unification of this mainland suddenly vanished and was passed into legend. When Yi Qingtang returned to this mainland again, she would never have imagined it would become a world surrounded by magic. After leaving the two-star constellation, Yi Qingtang returned to the illusory void again. Only then did the god of nature crisply fling 2,000 points at Yi Qingtang. However, according to the rules, Yi Qingtang could only use these 2,000 points the next time she entered the illusory void. Now, Yi Qingtang could only use the 1,000 points she had obtained last time.